detrimental, consciously, you know what I mean? I got to stay connected. I've been given a wonderful assignment to introduce preeminent authority on African history, ancient African history, and history in general. Brother Tony BROWDER graced our classes. Back in the day, I don't know how many of you are familiar with, we used to operate and run the ancient African history classes. We had them over at the Homewood Library, and they ran for about 6 years. And the place to be on Tuesday was at the ancient African history class. We had some very profound brothers come through.
That's right, that's right.
Brother Tony being one of them. He graced us on at least 3 occasions with his works. And I don't know, those of you who are familiar with contributions to Nile Valley civilization know that that is the text. That is your study guide. Anything you want to know about African history, you want to get that and grow from there. He covers everything in it. He put out books, Brother BROWDER found 22 essays. His daughter is even an author, so she has a book here also. So it brings me great pride and pleasure to introduce the son and present to others the man of the hour. So without further ado, I want to bring on Brother Tony BROWDER.
Young sound in the house.
Hello, Pittsburgh.
Well, I'm really pleased to be here and to have the opportunity to share my information with you this evening. I had the pleasure of meeting Brother Kaka. You all have had the pleasure of knowing him all of his life. And I met him in 2001 on one of our trips to Kemet. And to say that he was the life of the trip is an understatement. But I was really pleased the brother invited me to come up and to share some information with you about a subject that is off the subject that I normally talk about, but is still very much related to the subject. And I'll tie all of those pieces together. But Brother Kaka asked me to do one thing before I get started, and that was to address a question that Grandma just put to him a minute ago when she received her sweat cloth. Apet Sit. What is Apet Sit? How many people have traveled to Kemet before? Right. Those of you who have traveled to Kemet know that Apet Sit is in the city of Waset, which the Greeks renamed Thebes, which the Arabs renamed Luxor or Karnak. Waset is the site of the greatest temple complex ever created by human beings on earth. This temple complex is so vast that you can take every church built in London, England, and put them inside of this temple and still have room for 2 football fields. Wow. It was documented as the oldest university on earth. So these temples were not just temples in the contemporary interpretation of a temple. They were centers of education, institutions of higher learning. And the priests who moved about, the priests and priestesses who moved about within these temples were scholars of the highest magnitude. They were responsible for studying the heavens and the movement of the stars, the sun and the moon across the heavens. And as a result, they gave humanity the first calendar of 365 and 40 days. They were responsible for giving us the first systems of writing. They were responsible for creating the first library. There were tens of thousands of books in the Apet Sit, the most selective places. They were responsible for giving us mathematics, geometry, calculus, engineering, architecture, philosophy, medicine, theology. So Kemet, specifically the Apet Sit, and Waset, the most selective places, was where that was in ancient times where the United States of America is today. That was the place to be. People came there from all over the world to get a piece of what Africans have been studying for thousands of years. See, the thing that makes Kemet so significant is that no nation in the annals of human history existed as long as Kemet existed. 3,000 years. 3,000 years of continuous existence. They've had a few minor periods of interruption, but 3,000 years. And so, the United States of America is not even 250 years old. It's already on the decline. Absolutely. So you can imagine just 1,000 years of scholarly research, what your contribution to humanity would be. Now magnify that 3 times, and you got Kemet. That's why we focus our attention on the Nile Valley. That's why Kemet is so important to us. And we know, architecturally, from an astrological standpoint, from a sociological standpoint, Kemet was initially populated and inhabited by indigenous African people. Yes. Indigenous African people. So this idea of saying that Egypt, when I was living in Chicago, I remember writing a report on Egypt and consulting the World Book Encyclopedia. And in the World Book Encyclopedia, they stated that the Egyptians, now this is a world-renowned authority, they stated that the Egyptians were a race of dark-skinned Caucasians. That's how they were classified, dark-skinned Caucasians. So in essence, what we're dealing with is the history, the culture, the philosophy, the contributions of African people in the Nile Valley has been usurped by conquerors. And the story was turned upside down. And then others used fragments of this information in order to elevate themselves falsely to the highest level of humanity. And thus they propagate the lies about the ancient African world. And one of the significant aspects which relates to what I'm going to talk about this evening is that Kemet was the source of knowledge. Not just knowledge about the world, but knowledge about the universe. It had been cataloged and retained for thousands of years. But when the Europeans began coming in, first to study this knowledge, and then as conquerors, they took the fragments of this information that they could understand in their limited understanding, took that knowledge back to Greece, back to Rome, and they became the creators of culture and civilization in the European world, with just a fragment of African knowledge. And so it was these fragments which are now being popularized and promoted throughout the world as the secret. The secret. And so what I want to do with my background in ancient Kemetic history, what I want to do here with this presentation is to unlock the secrets of the secret, and specifically to look at the African roots of the secret, so that you will understand very clearly what the source of this knowledge was, and more specifically, you'll begin to understand how you can apply this information in your life. See, knowledge means nothing if you can't find practical ways to incorporate this information into your life on a daily basis, and within 30 days you should be able to see demonstrated proof that this knowledge is working in your life. If you can't do that, if you can't see that, then you need to throw that away or put it aside and search for something else that will give you what you need in order to negotiate life. So we're going to take this approach in examining the secret. And it's a two-part presentation. It's a little lengthy, but I think you all can tolerate it. It's a little lengthy. I want to break things down. I like to use a lot of visuals. I've got an audio track that I'm going to share with you. I've got a clip from a television program I want to share with you. I got a clip from a movie to show you that the secret ain't new. The secret has been in use for quite some time. We just didn't know that it was a secret. And we're going to take a little break. I'm going to share with you the second part of the presentation, and then I'll finish up and we'll open the floor for questions. Okay, so that's the program for this afternoon. And we're going to essentially do this program with a PowerPoint presentation so that you can understand not just the concepts that I'll be talking about verbally, but I also want you to be able to see the images and understand how the images relate to history and culture, and put the two together so that you can know. It's not about guessing. It's not about hoping. It's not about wishing. It is about knowing, because knowledge rules the world. It always has and always will. So our goal should be to acquire knowledge. And it is the continual application of knowledge over an extended period of time which results in wisdom. So we're going to be dealing with these two things this afternoon. Is that okay? All right, good. So, was that explanation about Pet-I-Sit okay, Brother Kaka? Okay. So, this is a miniature version of our Pet-I-Sit. How many of you all recognize that music? Okay. 1966, the television program Star Trek introduced us to a concept. That concept was space, the final frontier. Well, today, scientists have voiced a different opinion as a result of study and research. They now realize that the final frontier is not outer space. The final frontier is inner space. More specifically, the final frontier is the mind. Right? So the latest brain research suggests that your mind is like a starship. Your thoughts are an endless fuel supply, and your consciousness is the captain of this mighty vessel. And under your command, your mind can take you where you have never gone before.
Right.
So this unique vision of the future, of our future, what's happening right now, has been supported by neurologists and quantum physicists who have made incredible gains in brain science and the studies of human perception just within the last 10 years. And so what we find now is that what was once considered science fiction is now regarded as science fact. This book, What the Bleep Do We Know? This book and the DVD is of significance to everybody in this room. I don't know how many of you all saw the movie when it was out several years ago, but you need to either rent or purchase the DVD. And it's advisable to purchase the book so that you can, on your own time, at your own pace, begin to understand some of these heavy concepts, which physicists are just now beginning to realize that these concepts are as old as time. And it is these concepts which will now change our perception of reality. So we are standing at the threshold of a new frontier. We need to get ready for this, right? It is a fact. Neurologists now know that the average person uses less than 5% of their brain. The average person uses less than 5% of their brain. Neurologists now know that our brains process 400 billion bits of information every second. But we are only conscious of 2,000 bits of information per second. Understand the disparity. So this is the equivalent of a person being conscious, awake, walking, talking, doing all the things that we do in a conscious state, only doing them 1 hour of every day, and being comatose 23 hours of every day for the rest of their lives. That's where we are right now. We think we're all that. So, I want you to understand another fact. Physicists have recently discovered that 95% of outer space is empty. 95% of space. You can look up and you get away from the city and go out into the country where stray lights from the city won't dampen your view of the nighttime sky, and you will see stars everywhere. You see the moon, you see planets, but 95% of what is out there is empty space. And this empty space is referred to as dark matter. They call it dark matter because it's unknown. They don't know what it is. They don't know what it's composed of, but they know it's everywhere. Now, scientists have also discovered that 95% of atoms, which comprise everything that we know in the material universe and the physical universe, 95% of all atoms is also empty space. And these atoms, this empty space, is also a form of dark matter. Okay? Scientists were shocked to discover in recent years that particles within dark matter can be manipulated by human thought. That examining these particles, the only time they appear is when they thought about them. So we're on the verge of a whole new frontier. Scientists are becoming aware that there is a new reality. They're becoming aware of the unlimited potential that exists within the mind. And at the same time, advances in brain research now indicate how little these great scientists really know about reality, really know about consciousness, really know about the mind. Philosophically speaking, we know that there are known knowns. There are things that we know we know. There are also known unknowns. Things that we know that we don't know. But there are also unknown unknowns. Things that we don't know that we don't even know we don't know. Let me give you a metaphor to explain this philosophical concept. I want to make it plain. I want to make it plain because I want to illustrate the scope of this new frontier of human potentiality. All right? If we were to distill the essence of human consciousness as it exists right now, you were to distill it in a measurable form, say water, it would fill a thimble. That represents the known knowns. The known unknowns will be the equivalent of taking that thimble full of water and pouring it into an 8-ounce glass of water. But the unknown unknowns, the things that we don't know, will be the equivalent of taking that 8-ounce glass of water and pouring that into the ocean. Wow. So let's be real. We don't have a clue. We don't have a clue. Folk think they know God. They don't have a clue. So, what I want us to begin to realize is that what we know is insignificant compared to all there is to know. And if we could put our egos aside for 1 minute, we would realize that despite all the technology, the iPods and computers and all of this stuff, we're still primitive beings. And specifically, what we know today pales in comparison to what was known in ancient times. So, our innate desire to know these unknown unknowns is what is expressed in the interest that has been generated by this DVD and book called The Secret. It truly has been a phenomenon. Within the last year, millions of copies of the book and the DVD have been sold worldwide. And it's not unlike the Da Vinci Code phenomenon of 4 years ago. The Secret has captured the imagination of millions of people throughout the world. And it represents their effort to yearn to understand the hidden mysteries of life, the unknown unknowns. So the question is, what is the secret? What is the secret? Well, the secret is a movement that was initiated by this woman, Rhonda Burns, who is was a Australian television producer. And to many people, the secret represents the next evolution in human consciousness. It represents the reintroduction of ageless wisdom, universal laws, and principles which will allow the masses of people throughout the world to become the masters of their own destiny. The 90-minute DVD, which she produced of The Secret, begins with a burnt out and depressed Rhonda Burns, taking a vacation to reassess her life. Her father had just died. She was having problems with her production company. Her relationships were in turmoil. So she just needed to get away, to have some quiet time, to reevaluate her life. And as she was unpacking her suitcase, she found a book which her daughter had placed inside of her suitcase. And that book was a book entitled The Science of Getting Rich, written by a man by the name of Wallace D. Wattles in 1910. And the book focused on how you could use your thoughts in order to attract wealth in your life. And as Wallace D. Wattles says in the book, riches don't necessarily relate to monetary wealth. And that everyone deserves the right to be rich, because you can't live life without wealth. You can't take care of your family. You can't take care of your household. You can't take care of yourself. So it is everyone's right as a human being to be wealthy. And the key to wealth is here in your mind. So Ms. Burns read this book, and the book inspired her to the extent to which she was able to now see and understand things that were beyond her comprehension. And she realized that she could use her thoughts to attract more prosperity in her life. So inspired by this new perspective, Ms. Burns did some research. And her research indicated that this document, called the Emerald Tablet, was the source of the secret. And the Emerald Tablet was said to have been written by an Egyptian by the name of Hermes Trismegistus around 3000 BCE. This was the source of the secret. And so it is said that this tablet, the Emerald Tablet, contained the knowledge of the universe. Okay? So Ms. Burns then traveled to the United States, and she interviewed 25 people who she said were living in the United States of America and were actively using this information in their lives. And she interviewed them for this documentary. Now, as a result of this documentary, the DVD, it has become the largest grossing DVD of its kind in history. Millions were sold. Initially, it was viewed over the internet, and then people began to purchase the DVD. And that is what spearheaded this phenomenon. So the essence of the DVD and these teachers was brought to national attention when many of the teachers were interviewed in magazines, newspapers, and then began to be interviewed on cable and regular television. But on February the 8th, Oprah Winfrey had several of the teachers and Rhonda Burns on her show. And during Oprah's conversation with Rhonda Burns said that she called the DVD The Secret because she wanted to appeal to people's innate desire to want to know the unknown, secret information. It was an incredible marketing ploy, and that's basically what it was. It was marketing. It was a masterfully produced DVD, which was designed to appeal to attention deficit adults. Okay, very easy to internalize, to ingest, and appeal to your basic instinct. But the reaction to the February 8th show on Oprah Winfrey was so overwhelming. Oprah said that she received more emails, more letters, more telephone calls from that one show than any other show she had done. So 8 days later, she did a second show on The Secret. And that show also began to address some of the issues and concerns that people had about this secret knowledge and helped to allay people's fears. Specifically, people, religious people who felt that this information was antithetical to concepts of God. So they dealt with this. But I'm going to deal with all of this as well. But I want to spend a few minutes and talk about the DVD. How many of you all have seen the DVD? Okay, a handful of people. How many of you all have read the book? A handful of people. Okay, fine. What I want to do is to give you a broad overview of the DVD. And I want to focus specifically on the dramatization in the beginning of the DVD, which shows how The Secret came into existence. So in the DVD, the story begins in Egypt. You see a shot of the pyramids at night in the background. And you see hundreds and hundreds of torches. This represents an invading army which is coming into Kemet. Kemet is now being conquered. And so inside one of the temples where the Emerald Tablet had been held for hundreds of years, we find the priests now have decided they must hide the Emerald Tablet. And so we see a scene where a priest within the temple takes a piece of papyrus, places it over the Emerald Tablet, where he makes a rub, he makes a quick copy of the tablet. And you can see him frantically trying to complete this assignment before the invaders come in and steal this precious document. He then finishes the copy, which he handles off to an elder within the temple. The elder then takes that papyrus document and puts it into a spade. He then instructs the young man to take the Emerald Tablet outside and bury it in the sand. And then what happens, as they explain, The Secret literally went underground. The Emerald Tablet was buried, and the papyrus copy was then spirited, safely spirited out of the country just before Egypt fell to the hands of invaders. The Secret was unearthed by members of the Knights Templars in 1070 BCE, when they conquered Jerusalem. Okay? And so this Emerald Tablet was then taken back to Europe. Specifically, it was taken to France, where the Knights Templars used the knowledge within this document in order to amass a great fortune and power, which threatened the existence of the Roman Catholic Church. And so then the Roman Catholic Church destroyed the Knights Templars. In 1310, they wiped them out. And this secret information was banned. It went underground again. Later, the secret was revealed to those great thinkers and philosophers and led to the development of the Renaissance and moved Europe out of the Dark Ages into enlightenment. And then she also says the secret was suppressed. Specifically, it was suppressed by powerful businessmen and many nations who in modern times have withheld this secret information so that they can maintain their stranglehold over the masses of people throughout the world. Not just here in the United States, but throughout the world. That was until Rhonda Byrne discovered the secret. So, what is the secret behind the secret? The essence of the secret is the law of attraction. And this is what they tell you. The law of attraction teaches you that everything in the universe is energy. Everything is vibration. They talk about the fact that all power is from within. It's not external. All power is from within and is therefore under your control. They talked about the fact that with this power inside, then what you think and what you feel and what manifests is always a match. You are the creators of your destiny. Not some external being that you never saw before. But it is you, the person that stares at you in the face every morning. You are the person responsible for your quality of life. And they talked about in the DVD, they gave you a constructional framework for this process that was referred to as the emotional guidance system. The emotional guidance system states specifically that it is our feelings, our emotions, that let us know how in tune we are to this power that pervades the universe. And they stated specifically that there are only two feelings, two emotions, good and bad. But there is a range in between the two. So as you move from good feelings at the top, you get lower and lower until you get closer to the bottom, which is negative feelings, bad feelings. There are only two emotions. So we have to become conscious of these emotions. And our emotional guidance system allows us to navigate between these two emotional extremes so that we may achieve our desired goals. The secret then identified 3 steps to this creative process. These steps were referred to as ask, answer, and receive. And they stated specifically that you must learn to ask for what you desire mentally. Ask mentally. Because the universe responds to your thoughts and your emotions much quicker than it responds to your words. That's a twist, isn't it? Yes. They said that you must also ask for what you desire. You must not ask for what you want. Because wanting means that you are without it. So if you say, I want this, and put that thought into the universe receives that thought that says, okay, this person wants it, which means that they don't have it, so that I will magnify their want and then make sure they always want it. You understand the concept? So you must be very clear about what it is you desire. And you must express the clarity. You must be very specific about how you express that clarity. So then the second point is answer. The universe answers all requests in time. It may not be in your time frame. It's in the universe's time frame. Because the universe knows what is best for you and when you should receive it. So it means then that you should be open to that which you want. You should be open to the answer. And then the third step is receive. You must bring yourself into alignment with what you desire so that you may recognize it when it comes. It may come in a different form, a form other than what you needed at that particular point in time in your development. So if you are open to receiving this, then you will recognize it when it comes in the form of a person or in the form of an experience, which allows you to achieve that which you desire. So that's the essence of the secret. That's basically the secret in a nutshell. What's significant is that all of this information was recorded in a book called The Law of Attraction, written by Esther Hicks. Esther Hicks is the author of several books, which deals with her going into trance and being a channel for a group of teachers who she refers to collectively as Abraham. And they then provide her with knowledge about the universe. This woman, Esther Hicks, was the first person that Rhonda Byrne contacted about doing the DVD. She centered the DVD around Esther Hicks and her work. She then also, we ask everybody to shut off all your cell phones, please. It's a distraction to me and everybody else in the room. So unless you're in a position to need your cell phone on, please cut it off. And so it's interesting about this relationship with Esther Hicks and Rhonda Byrne, because Esther Hicks initially taped the DVD and wanted to sell it to a television station in Australia. The television station didn't like the idea and decided not to pick up the program. And so she began to look at other ways and other places where she could market this information. She decided to come to America, since the majority of the teachers lived in America. And as a result of changing her marketing strategy for the DVD, she then went back to Esther Hicks and told Esther Hicks, we need to renegotiate your contract. And because we're going to use a different marketing strategy. And Esther Hicks said that she felt uncomfortable about now being approached to renegotiate her contract. She said, I take the interview with her. I haven't heard from her for, 6, 7, 8, 9 months. And now she comes back and says that we need to renegotiate her contract. And she said, I did not feel comfortable with it. And the Spirit told me not to acquiesce to her demand, because if I did, she would come back with other demands. Right. And so Esther Hicks decided, no, I'm not going to sign off on this. So that means that there are now 2 secret DVDs. The original DVD is the one with Esther Hicks. And when she decided not to sign off on the contract, Rhonda Byrne went back into the studio and then re-edited a new extended version of the DVD, which went on sale last November. So the extended version is the one that's being marketed. The extended version, excuse me for being a little crass, but the extended version is crap. It is crap. They edited out Esther Hicks, and then they took all of her concepts, all of her dialogue, and gave it to the sister, Lisa Nichols, who, even in the first DVD, really had nothing of substance to offer. But they selected her because she was a sister, and they knew they were going to market this DVD in the United States, so they wanted to appeal to the sisters. So now with the new DVD, they have the sister reading all of her dialogue, which means that it's a manipulation of the content, and it's a violation of her relationship with Esther Hicks. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in the presentation, but I just wanted to give you this as an overview, because I'm a researcher, right? And I believe that before I buy into something, I want to know where it came from. Right. I want to know who's responsible for producing it. I want to know who financed it. Right. I want to know all the things that went into creating this thing, so that I can know whether or not I should embrace it, how much of it I should embrace, or whether I should just put it on the side. So I do that with everything. I did that with The Secret. And so what I want you all to know, what I want you all to be very clear about, is that The Secret is essentially a contemporary introduction of ageless wisdom. I want you to understand very clearly that The Secret is not the final word on the subject matter. I want you to know that The Secret is not new, neither is it a secret. This knowledge has always been accessible to any person who is willing to seek it, to use it, and more importantly, to respect the power which came with this use. The Secret has been known by many different names throughout the years. And The Secret has been written about in many different books. I want to just share with you some of the references which Rhonda Byrne borrowed from as she produced The Secret. So you'll see that this is ageless wisdom. There's a little tiny book called The Kabbalah by 3 initiates. It contains The Secret. Okay? That information is in this little book which was written over 80 years ago. There's another book written by Manly P. Hall, 1920, I think 1929. Manly P. Hall produced this thick volume, which is a masterpiece, The Secret Teachings of Ageless Wisdom. It's an incredible book. It deals with The Secret. He's got a chapter in there on the Emerald Tablet. And he says, according to his research, that the Emerald Tablet is a fraud. It's not a legitimate tablet. He also talks, and this is in 1929. He also references other tablets from Kemet, which are as important, if not more important, than the so-called Emerald Tablet. Great piece of book, great piece of work. It takes time to get through, but it's an invaluable study. There's another book, Deepak Chopra. All right? He wrote a book several years ago called The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success. The secret is in that book. There's a book that a brother, an elder brother in Philadelphia introduced me to about 3 years ago called Psycho-Cybernetics. And this book deals with a breakdown. The revised version is called The New Psycho-Cybernetics. But any version is an adequate text to read and study. It deals with the mind, how the mind functions, and how you can program your mind to achieve specific things. This is all scientific. This is all valid science, valid realities. All right? And my favorite pre-secret book was a book that I read in 1978 called As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. So it's less than 100 pages, a small book. You buy that book, you read that book, study that book. Don't read it, you have to study it. Read after about the third read, it will kick in. And you'll find yourself thinking different thoughts and attracting certain things into your life. So this information is real. It has been out here since the beginning of time. I want us to realize and understand that all of these books talk about universal laws, how they operate, how they affect us, and how we can apply these laws in our lives in order to achieve prosperity by learning to apply these principles. These books and others like them teach us that there's an aspect to the universe that functions like a magnet. We project our thoughts into this magnetic universe, which then amplifies these thoughts and sends them back to us tenfold. Infused with power. This is the nature of the universe in which we live, not the world, but the universe in which we live. We will either be empowered or disempowered depending on our awareness of the power of our thoughts. This secret information, this knowledge teaches us that we are the creators of our destiny. We are the creators of our destiny. And so the essence of it deals with the fact that much of the joy and pain, much of the wealth and poverty, much of the health and disease that we experience throughout our lives is fueled by the thoughts that we create and we attract to us. We are the source of it. This is a profound truth which affects everyone, everywhere, regardless of your race, regardless of your sex, your nationality. It transcends religion. And it addresses our true reality as spiritual beings having a human experience. That is who we are. Yes. And so there are forces at play within this nation and throughout the world who don't want you to know who you really are. Yes, yes. What you are capable of doing. That is why this information has been suppressed. That is why people who talk about this information have been referred to as kooks, blasphemers. In other words, the people conjure in order to separate you from the power that you have. So as human beings, we all breathe the same air. We all see the same sun. We are all ruled by the same spiritual forces within the universe, whether we know it or not, whether we believe it or not. And what's significant is that most sources agree that this knowledge was first codified and practiced in Egypt over 5,000 years ago. That's the focal point. All of these books, all of these teachings takes us back to the Nile Valley, takes us back to Egypt. For over 3,000 years, The ancient Egyptians studied the secrets of the universe. And this knowledge, this research was stored in Per'ah, the house of life, the temples, the houses of life, which were built all along the Nile River. And this knowledge was taught to hundreds of generations of Egyptians who learned at a very early age how to apply these principles in their lives. For over 3,000 years, the United States of Egypt was the brightest light in antiquity. Very much like America is the brightest light right now. People came from all over to get a piece of this light, to get a piece of this information. This ancient country was originally known as Kemet. Kemet was to the ancient world what the U.S. is to the modern world. Foreigners came from the four corners of the earth to Kemet to bow at the feet of African kings and queens, to submit themselves to testing so that they would be allowed to study within Per'ah, the temples of life, the houses of life. And so some of them were brought into the temples and taught this information. The important thing for us to understand is that invaders came too. First the Hyksos, then the Persians, then the Greeks, then the Romans, and then other invaders. And each invading army took secrets and fragments of secrets out of Kemet, out of the Nile Valley, back to their homeland, where they were heralded as great philosophers, physicians, scientists, and thinkers. It's important for us to realize that we've been taught very little about the majesty of Kemet. Very little in our public school systems, and especially in our churches. Instead, we've been fed a steady diet of misinformation about Egypt and old wicked Pharaoh. And let me just share something with you. It's important to deal with certain terminology. Pharaoh is not a Kemetic word. Pharaoh is a word that was introduced to the world by Asiatics and so-called Hyksos, or shepherd kings, who invaded Kemet, one of the first invaders of Kemet. And they used that word Pharaoh to describe the rulers of Kemet. Anybody who has any knowledge of history should know that that is an illegitimate word. More specifically, the word Pharaoh is a word that was used to describe the house that the king of Kemet lived in. See, the king of Kemet lived in a palace which was called Per-Ah, which means the great house. So what these foreigners did was to take that term, great house, and use it to describe the person who lived in the house and resided over the entire country. So that would be the equivalent of a foreigner coming to the United States and referring to the President of the United States as the White House. They don't know that they don't know. And they're teaching you knowledge. So we've got to do some research so that we can learn to question. You should learn to question everybody, and there's nothing wrong with questioning people. We live in a society of ideas. We have a marketplace of ideas, and everyone should have the right and the opportunity to present your ideas in the marketplace of the general public. And with questioning, you will find out whether or not your ideas will stand up to the test of questions. And if they don't, you need to sit down and shut up and let someone else introduce information that will prove to be of valuable use to people of color. So I was sharing with my brother Brad this morning as we were driving around the streets of Philly. I said, you know, I travel a lot throughout the United States. And everywhere I go, I see our people, African people, at the bottom in every society. It doesn't matter where I go in this country, we're always at the bottom. And I can always tell when I'm in the hood because I see liquor stores, I see fast food restaurants, and I see churches on every corner. And at some point, we have to begin to do an analysis. If we've been praying to the God that was given to us by our former enslavers. And we still have not achieved parity, equality, health, wealth, and stability. Then maybe we're calling on the wrong God. Needs to be discussed and examined, because if you had a car and it wasn't running properly, and you took it to a mechanic, and he fixed it and charged you $500, and after you got the car back, it was in worse shape than it was in before, would you take it back to that same mechanic? No. So why would you allow your spiritual essence to be determined and guided by someone who is not proven their work? Okay? So, what I want us to look at, what I want us to understand, is that the current interest in the secret affords us an opportunity to study and decode the secrets of the secret. To begin to ask critical questions so that we can achieve the answers that we have been searching for all of our lives. And this whole process is significant for me because I've devoted the last 30 years of my life to studying African history and culture. Next month, I'll be making my 40th trip to Egypt. And that's since 1980. And so in my travels to Kemet, I have found a reason for living. I have found a meaning to life. I have found answers which have allowed me to chart my course through history. And it's through my lectures, it's through my books, it's through my other materials that I now make this information available to others who may not ever have the opportunity to travel to Kemet. You may not be able to physically go there, but you can mentally go there. Once you ingest information which frees your mind and gives you the past in a positive perspective that you can relate to. That's what we need. That is what we are searching for. And so, what I want to do, my studies of African history and culture have allowed me to develop the skill as a historical detective. You know? And so what I want to do now, in the spirit of one of the most popular programs on television, CSI, y'all familiar with CSI? Crime Scene Investigators. I want to take a page out of CSI, and I want to do a forensic analysis of the secret for your personal edification. Because what you notice in CSI, Crime Scene Investigator, a crime has been committed. So this team of scientists comes to the crime scene and they gather evidence. Gather evidence here and there. Take photographs. Document the crime scene. Then they go back into their laboratory. They do an analysis of all of this data, and then they present it to the detectives, who then know who committed the crime and pursue them. So we must apply the same principle to the secret. So in order for me to do this, I need 5 folks. We have 5 volunteers. Let's go up. 1, 2, young lady, sister, come on, 3, brother, 4, right here, 5. 5 folks, come up here. And I want you all, what I want to do is to allow my 5 people here to represent a timeline, a historical timeline. So I've got these dates. And brother, let me have a little sister here. Sister, I want you to represent the year 0. All right. And I want you to stand right here. Brother, I want you to represent the year 2007, current year. And I want you to stand against that wall right there. Careful with the cords. Sister, I want you to represent the year 30 BC. And I want you to stand right here. No, actually, I want you to stand right here, 30 BC. Brother, I want you to represent 332 BC. I want you to stand right here. And sister, I want you to represent 3000 BC. I want you to stand, go outside the building. All the way over here. So this is our timeline. And so I want to do an analysis of the secret based upon this timeline. And I want these people to be our reference point. Now, Kemet was fully developed 3000 BC. I already had the alphabet, had already begun building temples. The pyramids, Great Pyramids of Khufu, Great Pyramid of Saqqara, pyramid designed by Imhotep for King Zoser, was built around 2900 BC. So right up here. And then less than 160 years later, the 3 pyramids at Giza were built. The greatest architectural monuments in the history of humanity. The Greeks did not come into Kemet as invaders until 332 BC. All right? After everything had been built, the Greeks came as conquerors. They did not add anything new. The Greeks only had control of Kemet for a little less than 300 years before the Greeks were conquered by the Romans. The Romans came in 30 BC and stole everything that the Greeks had stolen from the Kemites. This represents today the year 0 when Jesus, quote unquote, was born. And then this is 2007 where we are right now. So this is our timeline. Right? This is our timeline. So what I want us to do, let's do this. Hi guys, you got a piece of tape? Oh, here it is. I got some. What I want to do is to post this timeline so that you all can use it as a visual reference as I talk about the secrets. So can you just take this on that wall? Sister, can you put this right here? This is the year 0. And can you put this on the other end of the podium right here? This is 30 BC. And can you put this right here? And can you take your piece to the wall? So this is our timeline. All right, thank you all very much. This is our timeline. We're going to use our original analysis of the secret. Okay? I want to go back to the images in the dramatization of the secret DVD and break that down for you from a historical perspective so that you can understand what the secret is really all about. Okay? The secret DVD begins in 30 BCE when Egypt is being invaded by the Romans. And the emerald tablet was buried in the foothills of the pyramid. Now, the emerald tablet had been used by the Greeks because in this dramatization, you notice that the scribe, the young scribe and the old scribe, were European. They're not African. Right. So what they represent is the Greeks who conquered Kemet in 332 BCE acquired the information from the so-called emerald tablet. They had it for 300 years before the Romans came in and took the knowledge away from them. So, the emerald tablet, and this is described now, and in the dramatization, there's this sense of dread, there's this sense of panic, as this guy is hurriedly trying to make a copy of the emerald tablet, right? And we're going backwards in the timeline. I want you to focus your attention on this close-up image of the scribe, and behind him there's a diagram on the wall, right? It's a little difficult to see because of the lighting, but I made a copy of it so that you can see. This is the image that's on the wall. Both who travel to Kemet and are aware of the history and culture would know that that is an image of Jehuti. It's an image of Jehuti holding in his hand a tetrahedron, and he has an arc on his arm, and he's sitting on an eye. All right? More specifically, he's sitting on the eye of Heru. Jehuti was the Kemetic Neter who represents the process of divine articulation of speech. He was a Neter, the so-called god of personality, who was associated with writing, science, measurement, and counting. He also was associated with healing. So, when I saw this diagram, I studied it and said, wait a minute, something is wrong with this illustration. Because we see Jehuti sitting or kneeling on the eye of Heru, holding in his hand a tetrahedron, which is this symbol, kneeling on the eye. See, but what's significant is that this is the eye of Heru, this is the eye of Jehuti. Eye of Heru is the right eye. The eye of Jehuti is the left eye. So Jehuti is sitting on the wrong emblem. Then it dawned on me the time frame in which this dramatization happened. So they limited the information that they gave to them, and based upon my analysis of this symbol, they inverted some of the symbols. When you invert something, you change its meaning 180 degrees. So they had the capacity now, even though they were conquered, to limit the conqueror's access to the information by distorting it. And they didn't know because they never seen this stuff before. So they could literally hide these secrets in plain sight. And that is what they did. That is exactly what they did. So I want to spend a few minutes analyzing this symbol. And I want you to understand what this symbol represents. And so the tetrahedron here that Jehuti is holding in his hand is the same as this emblem. That emblem looks a little familiar because it's known as the Star of David. It may be known to the Arab community as the Seal of Solomon. Those of you who read the Da Vinci Code know that it was referred to as the blade and the chalice. It is two symbols, the triangle pointing up, which represents masculine energy, and the triangle pointing down, which represents feminine energy. And the fusion of these two symbols represents the balance and the harmony of the masculine and feminine energy which pervades the world and the universe. And it's only by becoming aware of this information and learning how to balance this information in your personal life that you can master this secret knowledge and apply it in your life. So what that means, sisters and brothers, is that there is no superiority of the sexes. They are dependent on each other for each other's benefit. You hear that, George? All right. So male and female are co-equal. And this balance between the both is necessary for there to be anything, because this exists on all levels, not just physically, but atoms on an atomic level. You have atoms. Atoms are comprised of electrons, neutrons, and protons. Protons are positive energy. Electrons are negative energy. And neutrons are nuclear energy. Masculine, feminine, and neutral energy, which comprises everything in life. Everything in life. So everything has to be balanced in order for there to be life. All right? So, let's look at and understand essentially what happened. So, people in Kemet withheld information from Europeans. And in withholding the information, they changed the whole dynamic of Kemetic culture and civilization. The knowledge was first developed in the temples, but when the Greeks came in, they took the knowledge out of the temples, took it back to their homeland. So this information that has been stolen from Kemet is now a part of Masonic educational and religious systems that are practiced throughout the world. What I want us to realize, and it's no coincidence that this presentation is being held in a Masonic temple, which used to be a church. Right? All this stuff is connected. All of this stuff is interrelated. What I wanted you to realize and understand that in ancient Kemet, knowledge and information was conferred in degrees. And so you had to demonstrate your mastery of information before you be allowed to advance to the next degree. If you couldn't add, if you couldn't write a dissertation, you can't be promoted to the next grade level. And so we find that this was the model that was used for the Masonic and the educational system today. Elementary school takes you up to the 8th degree. High school takes you up to the 12th degree. Bachelor's takes you to the 16th degree. Master's take you to the 18th degree, and a PhD is the 20th degree. Within Masonry, whether it's the Scottish Rite or the York Rite or the Masonry, the highest degree is a 32nd degree. 33rd degree is an honorary degree, which is only conferred among certain people within the York Rite or the Scottish Rite who have demonstrated their mastery of all of the degrees within that specific Masonic organization. What I want you to know, what I want you to understand, what I want you to be clear about, is that in Kemet, in the Nile Valley, these African priests had 360 degrees of knowledge. And they taught the Greeks less than 10% of the knowledge that they had. And with that 10%, these Greeks went on to become the master of the world by controlling the information and the images which came out of Kemet. That is how the secret became a secret. And that is why we can talk that we use less than 10% of our brain. Because the people who control us have less than 10% of the knowledge. So as long as they keep you functioning at a dysfunctional level, and you don't know that you're dysfunctional, you think that you're all that. So, I'm from Chicago, so I'm going to use west side of Chicago. So, I'm going to use a little Chicago street vernacular in order to express this phenomenon, what I'm talking about. The knowledge that came out of Kemet has been stepped on. It's been cut so many times that it doesn't get as high like it's supposed to. Knowledge is the real high. Knowledge is supposed to get you high.
That's right.
Physically higher to your creator, your source of all life, and internally it generates a state of euphoria that's better than sex. All right? So and so what I want us to understand, what I want us to be clear about, is that we've been so doped up, and so dumbed down for so long, that we are comfortable using 5% of our brain. And many of us aren't even interested in developing more of our brain power. And when some of us attempt to do that by coming to a lecture on a nice Saturday afternoon, your friends and family look at you like you're out of your mind. As if there's something wrong with you for trying to gain some knowledge. They think you're trying to be white. But what they don't know is that white folks don't have a monopoly on intelligence.
That's right.
Intelligence was first developed and demonstrated in Africa thousands of years before there was civilization in Europe. So to be intelligent is to be African. To be articulate is to be African. That is who we are. And that is the state of mind that we must return to in order to save the world.
Absolutely.
So, let me get back to, and when the Greeks left Kemet, went back to Greece, they created stuff like this. They couldn't stand the test of time. It does not compare to the structures that are still standing in Kemet. So I want to spend a few minutes looking at Jehuti, breaking Jehuti down. That word Jehuti can be spelled different ways depending on which European language we're using to vocalize an African concept. You'll notice that Kemet is spelled different ways. Africa is spelled different ways because we are communicating with each other via the language of our former conquerors.
Absolutely.
Okay? So, Jehuti was the Neter who represented divine wisdom in Kemet. He was first known to the Greeks as Thoth when they began traveling to Kemet to study. And it is from the Greek word Thoth that we have derived the word thought. See, Jehuti represents a process of divine articulation of speech. So before you can vocalize your thoughts, you must first mentally conceive them. Everything begins with thought before it is spoken. So the very process of thinking is about engaging a comedic concept of intellectual power. When the Greeks conquered Kemet, they Hellenized Thoth's name and personality, and they called him Hermes. So here's Jehuti, and down here at the bottom is an image of the Greek god Hermes. This is in 332, right here on our timeline, 332 BC. Hermes was also known to the Greeks as Hermes Trismegistus, Hermes the thrice great. And remember what Rhonda Burns said about the Emerald Tablet, that the Emerald Tablet was written by Hermes Trismegistus 3000 BC. There was no Hermes Trismegistus in 3000 BC. Hermes Trismegistus originated in 332 BCE. And if you look at the image of the Emerald Tablet, this is also another nail in the coffin. If you look at the image of the Emerald Tablet, you see that the Emerald Tablet is comprised of several texts, several letters, which are Greek and Phoenician. It's not Kemetic. There's no meta-nature on the Emerald Tablet. But that just got by folk who were so enamored by the secret. See, if you don't do your research, if you believe in things that you don't understand, you what? You suffer. Superstition ain't ways. It is knowledge. It is wisdom that is worth pursuing. So, the Greeks held all of the knowledge of ancient Kemet until they were conquered by the Romans in 30 BCE. When the Romans conquered the Greeks, the Romans then, here's the Emerald Tablet, socially associated with Hermes Trismegistus. The Romans then conquered Kemet, and they Latinized Hermes, and he became known to the Roman world as Mercury. Same personality, viewed through a different cultural lens. So if you don't know your culture, you will give someone else credit for what your ancestors did thousands of years earlier. That's why the people of Kemet advise you to know yourself. Know yourself. Right? So let's look at this. Mercury and Hermes are known today, 2007, as the FTD man. That was the logo for FTD man. You notice that both Hermes and Mercury have wings on their head and wings on their feet, which symbolizes swiftness of thought and swiftness of motion. So Hermes and Mercury, both were messenger gods to the Greeks and the Romans. They were the messenger gods. Now, I want you all to understand this very clearly. The symbol that both Hermes and Mercury hold in their hands is a symbol called the caduceus, the staff of Hermes. You all will recognize that this is the symbol that is associated with the medical profession. But what I want you all to know, what I want you all to understand clearly, that this is an African symbol. This is a Kemetic symbol. For those of you who have gone to the Nile Valley, you go into the Temple of Abydos, the oldest temple known to mankind. The footprint of this ancient temple, because different temples have been built on that location over periods of time, but the footprint of this temple dates back to over 4000 BCE. Abydos was the site of the first sacred pilgrimage known to mankind. Thousands of years before Jerusalem, thousands of years before Mecca. People came to Abydos. And within the Temple of Abydos, there is a diagram of Jehuti holding in his left hand a pair of staffs. One staff has a serpent, a cobra entwined around it, and wears the crown of Upper Kemet. The other one has a cobra, wears the crown of Lower Kemet. Jehuti is holding both of these symbols of power in his left hand, and in his right hand, he is holding an ankh, the symbol of life. And he is holding that ankh to the nostrils of the king, Seti I. So he is literally transferring life, power, knowledge, and wisdom to the king. So when the Greeks came in, they took this symbol, got rid of one staff, and intertwined the two serpents around the one staff, and gave it to you as a symbol called the caduceus. This is a symbol which represents your body, your mind, and your body, and the various systems which function within your body, and how these two systems must be, how these various systems must be balanced, because these systems represent the masculine and the feminine systems within your body. Because we all are masculine and feminine. Half of our chromosomes, 23 of our chromosomes came from our mother, 23 of our chromosomes came from our father, regardless as to whether or not we're in a male suit or a female suit. We have chromosomes from our mother and father. Else we wouldn't exist right now. So again, it reinforces the importance or the power of balancing masculine and feminine energy in order to have reality, in order to have life. So, what I want us to look at, what I want us to understand, is how this information has been co-opted by others. You all need to take a break for a minute? Are you okay?
Teach.
Okay?
Teach.
Keep going.
All right, keep going. All right, we'll forego the break. All right. What I want to focus on now is unlocking the secrets of the secret. Giving you a general overview, I want to bring all of this home. I want you all to see, I want you to understand how this information has always been around you, has always been a part of your life, and I want to focus specifically on how you can use this information within your personal life. It is your right to use this information. And so we're going to look at unlocking the secrets of the secret. And in doing so, I want you to understand that the secret is like an iceberg. And if you know, icebergs are so heavy that just 10% of the iceberg is visible above the surface of the water. The other 90% is hidden from view. And so my goal here in unlocking the secrets of the secret is to do it through an analysis of the African roots of the secret. Because it all goes back to home. It all goes back to home. So the question is, do you know where home is?
Yes.
You got the key to get into your house.
I'm ready.
All right? So in looking at this, we know, as Africans living in America, we know from the study of African American history that the contributions of Africans have seldom been acknowledged and have often been claimed by Europeans. We know that Eli Whitney didn't invent the cotton gin.
That's right.
But we don't know the name of the enslaved African who created this labor-saving device. We know that Matthew Henson was the first man to reach the North Pole, but Robert Perry got the credit. We know that James Brown is the godfather of soul and R&B, but Elvis is still the king. So we know that Africans have always had to fight for recognition of our accomplishments. And it is no different in the secret. It's not right, it's not fair, but this is the hand that we've been dealt. And so we've got to deal with this situation and make the most out of it. But there are ways that we can do that. And so it's important for us to realize that we have to know ourselves so that we can defend our culture by reclaiming that which we were not supposed to know. And if you don't know your historical timeline, if you don't know your place along this historical timeline, then you cannot negotiate the landmines of history. You cannot resist having your mind blown when someone rips off your story and then presents it back to you as their history. So, I want to look at the secret. And I want to look at the secret from this perspective. Bob Proctor, who was one of the elders among the teachers, talked about the secret. And he stated, and this is a direct quote, he said, "I don't care if you live in India, Australia, New Zealand, Stockholm, London, Toronto, Montreal, or New York. We all live under one power, one law, attraction." Bob Proctor made no mention of Dakar, Prague, Johannesburg, Cairo, or Africa where the secret originated. There's something wrong with that. He also went on to say, and this is a direct quote, "Wise people have always known the secret." You can go right back to ancient Babylon. Again, no reference to Egypt. the country in Africa where even they showed you in the beginning of the DVD where the secret was born. So we've got to do an analysis so that we can understand when people hide information in plain sight. And near the end of the DVD is when I got irritated. I really got irritated. Because at the end of the DVD, they began to discuss the secret in the world. And they showed us images of unrest throughout the world in different cities. And I found in these images very disturbing racial stereotypes. We saw an image of an African-American male in a detention center behind a chain-link fence. We saw an image of two African male hands reaching through the bars of a cell. And so I was offended by these racial stereotypes. And I expect more from a supposedly spiritual enlightening book and DVD. As a result of studying our history and culture for over 30 years, I've developed high standards. And I am a historical detective. And I have developed an internal lie detector. I know what to believe and, more importantly, what not to believe. My internal lie detector was going off as I watched this segment of the DVD. And experience has taught me to be suspect of any person who references ancient African Egyptian spiritual knowledge, but will not portray the Egyptians as indigenous Africans, something that has been substantiated as a historical fact. If they could hide a fact that could be so easily disproven, what else might they try to hide? Right? So we have to develop this critical eye. And in looking at this critical eye, that is what caused me to analyze the secret. And based on my assessment, I find the secret to be old wine in new bottles. And I've come to see Rhonda Byrne as the P.T. Barnum of New Age thought. You know, P.T. Barnum who said, there's a sucker born every minute. She has brought various acts together under her spiritual big top, and she is now marketing The Secret as the greatest show on earth. Let's go back to Esther Hicks for a minute. Esther Hicks has finally come out and spoken out on The Secret. She has a new book and a new DVD. The DVD is entitled The Secret Behind the Secret. And she's spilling the beans on Rhonda Byrne. Now what's significant is that this represents their attempt to set the record straight about the law of attraction and how the law of attraction operates. I really did set the record straight about the law of attraction and how the law of attraction operates. I really did, Esther Hicks. I find her to be a very spiritually grounded person. And on the original DVD, I found that Esther Hicks and Michael Beckwith were the two cornerstones of that DVD. The truth resonated with much of what they said. Everybody else was like kind of vacillating all over the place, but they were constant. So what I want us to, what has happened in recent months is that several of the teachers of The Secret have distanced themselves from Rhonda Byrne. And they've also distanced themselves from some of the comments that were made from some of the teachers in The Secret. Nightline, several months ago, did, I think it was back in May, did a piece on The Secret and analyzed some of the stuff in The Secret. And Bob Proctor, you know, they asked him point blank about certain statements. He said, well, I don't know about that. All I know is. And so, you know, some people, some detractors are trying to tear it down because they're afraid of what this information could eventually mean to power in the world. And others are tearing it down because they see flaws in it. And it's your right to critique something with a careful eye. But what's significant is that much of the criticism of The Secret has come as a result of people realizing that it tends to oversimplify complex things. And it places too much emphasis on material gains instead of spiritual development. But there is good in the secret. The good is that this DVD and this book have prompted millions of people to begin to examine their personal lives and begin to accept responsibility for their thoughts and actions. And these are the first steps toward the development of a higher consciousness. So within all the other stuff that's happening, there is some good that hopefully will come out as people begin to see the world differently. History teaches us that what is known today as a secret was known to the Greeks as the mysteries back in 332 BCE. And mystery only meant that this information was unknown to them. It was a mystery, but it was a way of life to the people of Kemet. It was a way of life which was practiced from the cradle to the grave. And the grave robbers who invented Egyptology discovered texts and fragments of the secret in the tombs. And they referred to these fragments as the Book of the Dead. One of the, Esther Hicks referred to the movie called The Secret is still not revealing the secret. So this part of the contradiction is going on. I want you to keep your eyes open because you're going to hear more about this in the coming weeks and months. And you need to do an analysis of what you hear based on what comes out and who says it. But I want us to look at the so-called Book of the Dead, the Papyrus of Kemet, which was written about 1238 BCE. And within this document, we know first of all that the so-called Book of the Dead were notes for the afterlife. They were originally known as Pergam Heru, or the chapters for coming forth into day. The chapters are coming forth into a new life, a new consciousness. I refer to view them as cliff notes for the soul, because they were put in the sarcophagi in order to help the spirit of the deceased negotiate the 12 gates of the underworld, so that he or she could say the specific passwords which would help them get from one level of the underworld into the next underworld, so they can come into the Hall of Ma'at, the Hall of Justice. And this scene is one of the most significant scenes that comes out of these documents that show the weighing of the soul. This is what the journey was all about, the weighing of the soul. And in this process of the weighing of the soul, we see the soul of the departed, Kemet, is dressed in white. Because in indigenous culture, white is the color that represents death, the absence of life. Yes. Black is the color that represented the Creator, God. Here we see Impu, who's known to the Greeks as Anubis, leading that soul to the Hall of Ma'at. And here we have the most important symbol in this scene, the scale of Ma'at. You see an image of Ma'at here. The feminine head. Ma'at is feminine energy with the ostrich feather on her head. This is the scale of Ma'at. And on the right side of the balance, we see the feather of Ma'at, which again represents all of the principles and concepts associated with this African feminine nature, or principle or aspect of the divine. On the other side of the balance, we see a vessel which represents the heart of the deceased. Thus, the title of this piece, The Weighing of the Soul, because in ancient Kemet, the heart was viewed as the seat of the soul. So on the Day of Judgment, in 1238 BCE, Kemet heart was weighed on the scale of Ma'at. And it was there where he had to recite the 42 admonitions of Ma'at. 42 admonitions of Ma'at. Some of those admonitions are, I have not stolen, I have not robbed, I have not committed adultery, I have not committed sin, I have not defrauded offerings. These 42 admonitions of Ma'at were distilled by Moses and presented to his people as the 10 Commandments. And what we don't know is that they left 32 behind. Okay? After Ma'at Kemet declared his innocence as his heart was weighed on the scale of Ma'at. If his declaration was in fact true, if his words were true, then it meant that the scale would balance out because his heart would be as light as a feather. That's where the concept comes from. And this event was recorded in the Book of Life by Jehuti. Here's Jehuti again. And then Heru, the son of Asar, would then present the venerated Hunefer to his father Asar, who is seated on the throne of judgment. And then Asar would make a determination as to whether or not his soul would go to heaven or hell. So we're talking about African concepts of the soul, African concepts of the judgment of the soul, African concepts of the judge sitting on the throne of judgment, the 42 admonitions of Ma'at, from 13th century BCE, 1300 years before the birth of Jesus. And this is an old document which has been used in Kemet from the beginning of Kemetic time, at least 3000 BC. You see what folk have done with our knowledge? See how they changed our knowledge, flipped it upside down, and presented it to the world as their own creation. So, this is a very important scene, very significant scene. And what we know is that we know about the books of the dead. Everybody talks about the book of the dead, the book of the dead, the book of the dead. There are thousands, tens of thousands of so-called books of the dead. What they don't talk about are the books of life. See, because it appears when you listen to the Discovery Channel or National Geographic, they tell you that the Egyptians had a preoccupation with death. That's why they built all these tombs, they built all these monuments. No, these Africans had a preoccupation with life. And they knew that life was eternal. They knew that life was cyclical. They knew that you would be judged, and then you would come back and live another life. That is a part of contemporary African society today. That is why we honor our ancestors. Why? Because they live in us right now. We are the ancestors. So there is a continuum in this knowledge. Unbroken despite slavery. Unbroken despite segregation, Jim Crow. That essence is still in us. And so what I want us to realize is that forget this nonsense about the African people having a preoccupation with death. They had a preoccupation with life. So the question is, where are the books of life? If there were thousands of books of death, there must have been tens of thousands of books of life. Have you all ever seen them? They ever talk about them? They are secreted in private libraries throughout the world. People have been studying this information, trying to decipher the meta-nature, trying to understand the principles so that they can hold on to power as long as they can. And so what I want us to realize, that the teachings of Ma'at and Jehuti were the cornerstone of this knowledge system. So let's look at these two principles. Specifically, principles associated with Jehuti were given to us by Professor George G. M. James in his book, The Stolen Legacy, as the 10 virtues, the prerequisites for moral development. 10 virtues are control of thought, control of action, steadfastness, identity with the higher ideals, evidence of a mission, evidence of a call to spiritual order, freedom from resentment, confidence in the power of the master, the teacher, confidence in your own abilities, and then preparation for initiation. And of these 10 virtues, the first 3 are the most significant to me. Control of thought, control of action, and steadfastness. Everything begins with thought. Everything begins with thought. All of your actions are a direct result of how you think. So, as gosh, I'm blanking on my brother's name. Give me a minute. Carter G. Woodson said, if you control a person's thinking, what? You don't have to worry about their actions. You don't have to tell them where to go. You don't have to tell them to buy a 40 or smoke blunts, because their thoughts are going to pre-program them to engage in self-destructive behavior, so they will be no good to themselves or their community. So control of thought is the first thing, because your thought determines your actions. If you are thinking correctly, you will do correct things. The third point is steadfastness. So if you're thinking right and doing right, keep doing that. Maintain that steadfast relationship. And as you continue to do that over a period of months, your consciousness will begin to elevate itself, and you will begin to experience, you will begin to identify with higher ideals. This stuff that you see on television doesn't interest you anymore. The folks that you used to hang out with, party with, they don't interest you anymore because you now have higher ideals. You now see the world, you now see your life differently. And as you allow yourself to cultivate these higher ideals, you begin to experience evidence of a mission. Your purpose in life. Every person was born to do something better than any person on this earth. So our thoughts were designed to lead us in that direction so that we can find our mission in life. And when you find that mission in life, you will then experience a call to spiritual order. Call to spiritual order. You will unite your consciousness with the spirit in the universe. It will fuse itself within your body, and you will know who you are and what it is you must do. And as you experience that development, number 7 is key. You must experience freedom from resentment. Because your boyfriend or your girlfriend, your wife or your husband, your mom or your daddy, your friends say, what's wrong with you? You don't hang out like you used to. You think you better than we are, don't you? Simply because you found that reason for living. So you must be free from the resentment that your loved ones will heap upon you. 8, confidence in the power of the master. There's a saying that when the student is ready, the master will appear. So you must have confidence in the ability of the master who will enter your life and then help further your development along the spiritual path. And at some point, you must surrender yourself to the process and stop questioning everything. At some point, you've got to know that I trust this person. So what they tell me to do, I will do. Because I know they have my best interest in heart. And as you continue along that development, you then will experience confidence in your own abilities. Because the confidence of the master has now been distilled within you. And you now know with crystal clarity who you are and what it is you must do. And then 10-point preparation for initiation, you got to step into the world. You got to step into the community and demonstrate your mastery of these 10 virtues. That is your test. That is your test. That is the curriculum for the development of our spiritual power. And the symbol associated with that process was a triangle pointing up, representing this masculine energy, masculine physical energy, seeking to reunite with the source of spiritual power. So let's look at the feminine counterpart of that. It's represented in the 7 principles of Ma'at. 7 principles of Ma'at are truth, justice, righteousness, balance, harmony, order, and reciprocity. All right? Truth. Strive for truth in everything. Strive for justice and righteousness in everything that you do. Seek order, seek balance and harmony, and experience the reciprocity that will come with you aligning yourself with the universe. And the symbol associated with that is a triangle pointing down. It represents the spirit and the power of the universe now coming into you. So if we look at these 2 symbols again, then what we see, Jehuti, the masculine energy that pervades the universe, Ma'at, the feminine energy that pervades the universe, they come together in a symbol that should be known to us all. Those 2 symbols, these interlocking triangles, represent the essence of what is above and what is below, what is within and what is without. That allows you to understand, to begin to understand who you are. These concepts are the foundation of the secret. All right? Yes. So, Well, significant to know and to understand that according to the Da Vinci Code, the Da Vinci Code is a good book. It's a good read. It created a whole lot of controversy because folks don't want you to know certain information. But in Solomon's temple, by the Knights Templar during the First Crusade, when they were in Jerusalem in the 8th century, and that the Templars took this knowledge back to France with them, where they became powerful rulers before they were destroyed by the King of France and the Roman Catholic Church in 1307, specifically on October the 13th, 1307, which happened to be on a Friday. So that is the reason why Friday the 13th became an unlucky day, because that was the day that the knowledge was suppressed. Okay? So, fragments of the knowledge from the Templars then made its way to England and has been preserved in Masonic temples in England. And so when the British left England and came to the United States, that knowledge came across the ocean with them. So if you ever come to Washington, D.C., my current hometown, we have a field trip of D.C. In which I talk about the ancient Kemetic influences on the layout, design, and development of D.C. It's in my latest book, Egypt on the Potomac, A Guide to Decoding Egyptian Architecture and Symbolism in Washington, D.C. We take you around the city and show you our Kemetic architecture, Kemetic symbolism, Kemetic philosophy, which has been used in the development of Washington, D.C., which was the first planned capital in the modern era. And there are two buildings on 16th Street, which is the main street that runs through D.C., 16th Street. Two Masonic buildings. One is the Scottish Rite Masonic building for 32nd degree Masons. And on the doorway of that building, you'll see the tetrahedron, the blade and the chalice, the seal of Solomon, a symbol which represents the 13th degree or the royal arch of Masonry. They study this knowledge. Short distance away from that temple, there is a second Masonic temple. Matter of fact, this Masonic temple is called the House of the Temple. This building was, up until recently, the headquarters for all 33rd degree Masons in the southern jurisdiction of the United States. It is now the international headquarters for all 33rd degree Masons on the planet. This building, it's got Kemetic symbols all over and within the building. But specifically, I want to focus your attention on two Kemetic objects. Here's the doorway to the temple, and there are two sphinxes on either side of the doorway. The sphinx on the right side of the door has an image of Ma'at at the place of his heart. The sphinx on the right side of the doorway has a cobra at the voice box. These two symbols represent masculine and feminine symbols associated with Ma'at and Jehuti. They know this information. They teach this information within this building. They teach this information within this building. They help European men, because Masonry is for males only. This particular building was designed to help European men understand this ancient wisdom so that they can maintain their power within the world. So, this information is not really a secret. It has always been available to us. And there is no one secret. There are many, many secrets. What I want us to begin to realize and understand is how the absence of this information affects us. The original aim of this knowledge was to teach human beings, to teach people how to manifest the Creator within by using the laws of vibration, attraction, intention, and emotion. This knowledge was banned because it conflicted with religious dogma that was designed to limit our development as spiritual beings. This secret knowledge, this ancient African secret knowledge, never said that you were separate from your Creator or that you were born in sin. Never said that. This secret knowledge says that you were born with a Creator inside of you. And to not know this information was a sin. This knowledge is older than any man-made religion. But if you are unaware of who you are and the potential that exists within you, you will become fearful of this information. And fear will cause you to experience pain, poverty, illness, and suffering, which are all sins. We're all victims of social engineering, and thus we are strangers to our true identity. Some of you have watched The Secret, others have heard about it, and you're curious because you feel that there's more to life than you've been taught. And you are searching for something. You are searching for the truth that your soul yearns for. And as you begin to find fragments of this truth in your life, we begin to realize that this information has always been around us and has always been available. But we've never been instructed how to identify this information or how to use it for our individual and collective benefit. During the 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries, Africans struggled for human rights. During the 20th century, Africans struggled for civil rights. And now, standing on the verge of the 21st century, Africans are struggling for the right to seek a higher consciousness. That's where we are right now. And it is going to be a struggle based on the history of struggle that we have experienced. We find ourselves at the dawn of a new era filled with unlimited possibilities. We know from experience that light always precedes the dawn. And if we look back on the last 30 years, specifically to the 1970s, we will find that the airwaves were filled with transformative and enlightening thought, which helped to prepare some of us for our future. And upon close examination or reflection, we will find that the lips of wisdom spoke only to the ears of understanding. And only those with eyes to see saw the light, felt the vibe, and heard the messages that were transmitted through the airways into our consciousness. So, I want to bring this on home. I want to bring it on home by getting funky with it.
Come on.
George Clinton, in 1975, released this album entitled Standing on the Verge of Getting It On. The last cut on the B-side of that album was a tune called Good Thoughts, Bad Thoughts. And I remember 1975 was the year after I got out of college, and I was searching because Howard University did not teach me what I needed as a human being or as an African male. So I was searching, and I remember listening to this album. And as I listened to this song, Good Thoughts and Bad Thoughts, you know, it's an interesting song because it has a very slow Jimi Hendrix-like guitar solo in the background, and George Clinton is talking in a very low, slow voice. And it's like, you know, I realize now that, you know, when you're a public speaker and it's noisy in the room and you want to get people's attention, you speak softly. And people settle themselves so they can hear. So these were the techniques that George was using in this song in 1975. And I listened to the words of this song, the lyrics to the song. And I said, this is some deep stuff. Got pen and paper and wrote the lyrics down. And made a copy of it and pasted it up on my wall and recited these lyrics because I found strength, I found power in these lyrics. So what I want to do is to share with you these lyrics. What I discovered 3 years later was that the lyrics to this song, Good Thoughts and Bad Thoughts, were taken from James Allen's book, As a Man Thinketh. Wow. Okay? And so, from a funkadelic standpoint, these are cliff notes for your emotional guidance system. So I'm going to play a clip of Good Thoughts, Bad Thoughts, and then I'm going to give you an analysis of this song. Okay?
If it's alright,
it is your right to use this information. And so we're going to look at unlocking the secrets of the secret. And in doing so, I want you to understand that the secret is like an iceberg. And if you know, icebergs are so heavy that just 10% of the iceberg is visible above the surface of the water. The other 90% is hidden from view. And so my goal here in unlocking the secrets of the secret is to do it through an analysis of the African roots of the secret. Yes. Because it all goes back to home. It all goes back to home. So the question is, do you know what home is?
Yes.
You got the key to get into your house.
I'm ready.
All right? So in looking at this, we know, as Africans living in America, we know from the study of African American history that the contributions of Africans have seldom been acknowledged and have often been claimed by Europeans. We know that Eli Whitney didn't invent the cotton gin.
That's right.
But we don't know the name of the enslaved African who created this labor-saving device. We know that Matthew Henson was the first man to reach the North Pole, but Robert Perry got the credit. We know that James Brown is the godfather of soul and R&B, but Elvis is still the king. So we know that Africans have always had to fight for recognition of our accomplishments, and it is no different in the secret. It's not right. So, I want to bring this on home. I want to bring it on home by getting funky with it.
Come on.
There you go. In 1975, released this album entitled Standing on the Verge of Getting It On. The last cut on the B-side of that album was a tune called Good Thoughts, Bad Thoughts. And I remember 1975 was the year after I got out of college, and I was searching because Howard University did not teach me what I needed as a human being or as an African male. So I was searching, and I remember listening to this album. And as I listened to this song, Good Thoughts, interesting song because it has a very slow Jimi Hendrix-like guitar solo in the background, and George Clinton is talking in a very low, slow voice. And it's like, I realize now that, when you're a public speaker and it's noisy in the room and you want to get people's attention, you speak softly. And people settle themselves so they can hear. So these were the techniques that George was using in this song in 1975. And I listened to the words of this song, the lyrics to the song. And I said, this is some deep stuff. Got pen and paper and wrote the lyrics down. And made a copy of it and pasted it up on my wall and recited these lyrics because I found strength, I found power in these lyrics. So what I want to do is to share with you these lyrics. What I discovered 3 years later was that the lyrics to this song, Good Thoughts and Bad Thoughts, were taken from James Allen's book, As a Man Thinketh. Wow. Okay? And so, from a funkadelic standpoint, these are cliff notes for your emotional guidance system. So I'm going to play a clip of Good Thoughts, Bad Thoughts. Then I'm going to give you an analysis of this song. Okay? use comedy to make threatening information available to the general public. And while you're laughing, you should also be learning. Two should go hand in hand. So that once you learn enough, you stop laughing and start taking care of business. So I want you all to watch this clip with Richard Pryor. It's a very short clip, but you will see the secret in operation in 1977.
Professor! I got it open! Good heavens, man! Great Scott, we've discovered the fountain of all knowledge of Egypt in the entire world, Do you realize the importance of this moment, Smitty? Yes, I do. Do you see the brilliancy of the untold years? I see it, sir. This is medicine. Thank you so much. Thank you. Look, what is this? Tea. Yes. This is the elixir of life, sir. The elixir of life? The cure for all diseases. Wait, give it to me. Give it to me. Open. This can't be. You know what this is? What is it, Buddha? It's the book of life. In the beginning, when man arrived on earth, the black gods that leave their spacecraft, and they walked, and they named the beast of the sea and the animals of the land, and man in his blackness did walk to earth. Medicine. They discovered time. These are all black people, goddamn!
Listen now.
Oh, get this book out of here, baby! Control yourself, what you say. Black people discovered it. Started the music and the brain surgery back in the year 3 BC. Man, they was getting down. This is it, brother. Everybody gonna know about this. Listen, we can change the history. Civilization will change. Shut up! Good heavens, time for tea, eh?
That's the secret. 1977, Richard Pryor showed us the secret. An Egyptologist went into a tomb and found the book of life. The book of life. Africans came and created everything. Everything. And there's nothing in there about Europeans. All right. They created brain surgery back in the year 3 BC. He was off by about 2,700 years. But he was still in the right ballpark. But notice Richard Pryor said, wait till the brothers and sisters see this. I've got to get this book out of here. It will change history. Why? Because knowledge is power. So Richard wanted to get the book out of here, and these folks said, we cannot destabilize the power structure in the country and in the world. So they destroyed the secret. You all understand what we're talking about here? It's about you. It's about you knowing who you are, what your ancestors done, how your ancestors knew God, the words they used to relate to God. This knowledge allowed these Africans 6,000 years ago to create things that mankind, with all of its technology, cannot duplicate today. Do you realize that within the 20th century, more people died in warfare at the hands of Christians, Jews, and Muslims in the last century than died in wars in the totality of all humanity. Wow. Maybe there is another way. I submit this for your consideration. Maybe there is another way. Have you taken the time to investigate these other ways? To see what they are, where they came from, and what value they have in your life? If you haven't, then I would suggest that you do so. Because without knowing what existed, there's an old saying, high school teacher of mine used to say that to not know what happened before one was born was to always remain a child. And I submit to you all this afternoon, this evening now, that to not know what happened before your ancestors were enslaved is to always remain a slave.
That's right.
Okay?
Yeah.
So it's about taking that step to know who you are. And then applying that knowledge in your life for your sake, for your children's sake, for your community's sake, for the world's sake. Because what's been operating in the world for the last 2,000 years, it ain't working. It ain't working. There were other ways that have been suppressed. Do you know those ways? So, I'm going to share with you another clip, another movie. The movie came out about 3 years ago. The movie was entitled National Treasure. National Treasure. And I did a lecture on National Treasure. Same thing with National Treasure that I did on the Da Vinci Code and the Secret. Dissect it, analyze it from an African-centered perspective. The opening sequence of National Treasure begins in 1974. Begins in 1974. I want to share with you that opening sequence to National Treasure. And I want you to see how this relates to The Secret. All right?
Was 1832 on a night much like this. Charles Carroll was the last surviving signer of the Declaration of Independence. He was also a member of a secret society known as the Masons, and he knew he was dying. He woke up his stable boy in the middle of the night and ordered him to take him to the White House to see Andrew Jackson, because it was urgent that he speak to the president.
Did you talk to him?
No, he never got the chance. The president wasn't there that night. But Charles Carroll had a secret. So he took into his confidence one person he could, my grandfather's grandfather, Thomas Gates.
What was the secret?
A treasure. A treasure beyond all imagining. A treasure that had been fought over for centuries by tyrants, pharaohs, emperors, warlords. And every time it changed hands, it grew larger. And then suddenly, it vanished. It didn't reappear for more than 1,000 years, when knights from the First Crusade discovered secret vaults beneath the Temple of Solomon. You see, the knights who found the vaults believed that the treasure was too great for any one man, not even the king. They brought the treasure back to Europe and took the name, the Knights Templars. Over the next century, they smuggled it out of Europe, and they formed a new brotherhood called the Freemasons in honor of the builders of the Great Temple. War followed. By the time of the American Revolution, the treasure had been hidden again. By then, the Masons included George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, Paul Revere. They knew they had to make sure the treasure would never fall into the hands of the British. So they devised a series of clues and maps to its location. Over time, the clues were lost or forgotten, until only one remained, and that was the secret that Charles Carroll entrusted to young Thomas Gates. Charlotte. The secret lies with Charlotte.
Who's Charlotte?
Oh, not even Mr. Carroll knew that. Now look here, Ben. The Freemasons, among our founding fathers, left us clues like these: the unfinished pyramid, the all-seeing eye, symbols of the Knights Templar, guardians of the treasure. They're speaking to us through these.
Okay, the secret. See, folk are useful to you. Folk know that there's information that is crucial to the development of the world. So there's a group of people who is doing everything within their power to withhold that information. And there's another small group of people who are finding strategic ways to release that information to the public. They can't just come out and say it. So they have to release it in films and books, and very subtly put the information out there so that those with eyes to see will see the message and know what to do. So the question is, are you developing your mind and your body to receive the message? Because it's all around us now. And with this information, with the analysis of this information, you will be able to change your condition in life. There's no reason for black folk to be as poor as we are.
That's right.
To be as sick as we are. To be as distressed as we are. With the information right at our fingertips to change our condition overnight. Overnight. The secret, national treasure. Yes, as I said, I got a 3-hour lecture I do on National Treasure, the movie, and just break it all down. The essence of national treasure is the national treasure is not gold and diamonds and precious minerals unearthed from the soil. The real national treasure are the precious memories that are unearthed in the mind, right here. You got to dig deep inside yourself to bring out the jewels, the things that will empower you to find your rightful place. So I'm just showing you how, just 3 examples thus far of what was happening in the 1970s to make you aware of what's been available. But I want to bring it on home now. I want to bring it on home to show you that no group, no organization did more to talk about secrets than my favorite group, Earth, Wind, and Fire. Earth, Wind, and Fire. The elements. Spend a few minutes looking at and talking about Earth, Wind, and Fire. All right? Earth, Wind, and Fire was a brainchild of Maurice White. White family came from Memphis, Tennessee, and then moved to Chicago. So Maurice and his brothers grew up in Chicago. And Earth, Wind, and Fire was one of the most successful bands in history. They just happened to be an R&B group, but they were one of the most successful bands in the late 70s and the early 80s. What's significant about Earth, Wind & Fire is that they were one of the first groups with broad crossover appeal. And their music and their lyrics had a message. Right? Their music and their lyrics were both exoteric and esoteric. You know, it will make you get your groove on. But if you listen with your inner ear, you will hear the real secrets that Maurice White and Earth, Wind & Fire were trying to impart. So regarding the music of Earth, Wind & Fire, Maurice said that music is the language of the soul. It seeks to communicate a message with everyone that is open to receive. We dance to the beat of the master drummer, which is the source of our creative spirit. There is also a feeling of inspiration that comes with the experience and appreciation of your roots and relating to your culture in a positive way. And regarding the creation of the group Earth, Wind & Fire, Maurice said, and this is a direct quote, "I came up with the name Earth, Wind, and Fire because my astrological chart had no water in it. Earth, air, and fire didn't sound right, so I used wind instead. I of what I wanted the group to look like." Now dig this. He said, "I was reading Napoleon Hill's book, The Laws of Success, at the time, and I put the drawing in the back of the book." So he was tapping into this same knowledge about how to be successful, how to draw into you the things that you desire so that they may manifest themselves in your world. This is back in the 70s. So regarding his vision for Earth, Wind & Fire, Maurice said, "Coming out of a period of social confusion in the 70s, I wanted Earth, Wind & Fire to reflect the growing search for greater self-understanding, greater freedom from the resentments that we have placed on ourselves in terms of our individual potential." So Maurice was saying, I embedded in my music the keys to the power which would allow you to reach your potential. So if we look at Earth, Wind & Fire, Earth, Wind & Fire released 7 major hits, sold over 1 million copies each within 5 years. And on these albums, much of their music reflects this search for a greater self-understanding. And see, what's so significant about all of this, and I'm speaking to the young folk here in the audience specifically, you know, the music the young folk are listening today, it ain't music. It ain't music. And much of the music that they're listening to samples old school music from the 70s, from the 60s, and the 70s. Why do you sample old school music? They said because that was real music. Alright? So whenever people create something new or desire to create something new, they always engage in acts of Sankofa, whether they know it or not. They look back to get something from the past, a new future. And so they reach back to the 60s. That's when the music was alive. That's when there were messages in the music to transform the consciousness of tens of thousands of people throughout the United States and ultimately throughout the world. That's why the powers that be had to change the music. Yes. Had to change the music. Because you all were getting too close to this power. And again, the ability to hold on to the knowledge which had allowed them to support ancestors for generation after generation after generation. Some of the significant hits of Earth, Wind & Fire are Power, Head to the Sky, Mighty Mighty, That's the Way of the World, Shining Star, Yearning and Yearning, See the Light, All About Love, Imagination, Serpentine Fire, and Fantasy. All of these songs have messages in which will help you to cultivate your higher consciousness and empower you to know yourself. What's significant about Earth, Wind, and Fire, one of my favorite groups, because I discovered them at a very critical time in my life. I mean, I guess that old saying, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. I learned a lot from Earth, Wind, and Fire, from analyzing their music, studying their music. 1976 was the Spirit album. The Spirit album dedicated to Charles Stepney. Charles Stepney was a writer and producer of Earth, Wind, and Fire. I believe he wrote After the Love Is Gone and a number that produced all of their major early hits. And he died in 1976. So they devoted the album to his spirit. Says Spirit is devoted to the memory of Charles Stepney. It was the first album in which he saw Kemetic pyramids. And every album thereafter incorporated elements of ancient. He died, and as an ancestor, he spoke to Maurice White and said, Maurice, the time is right now to go back to Kemet. To go back to Kemet. Message to our people to help them progress. And so, one of the best Earth, Wind, and Fire albums came out in 1977. See, I mean, it was breathing. Earth, Wind, and Fire came out with the album All. And it's got to be one of the greatest album covers in the history of albums. This album depicted the temple of Abu Simbel. Anyone who's ever traveled to Kemet, remember the Abu Simbel is like the highlight of the trip. The pyramids are alright. Abu Simbel, it blows your mind to see what our ancestors did. Abu Simbel was a temple that was built for. He was one of the longest ruling kings of Kemet. He was one of the most prolific builder in Kemet. Ruled for some 67 years to the 1225 BCE. This temple of Abu Simbel was literally carved out of a mountain. It is huge. These 4-seated statues of Ramesses are 65 feet high, 6.5 stories high. Between these two temples, these two statues, there is a doorway down here. Here's a man standing right here. All right? Beyond these statues, there's a doorway. Inside of the with 8 17-foot-high statues of Ramesses, which were designed specifically to support the weight of this mountain. This whole temple is literally carved out of a mountain, exterior and interior. Inside, all around the first room, are images and metal nature that depict specific aspects in the life of Ramesses. Beyond that first room, there's a second room with antechambers which run into the north and the south side of the mountains, where the priests stored many of the implements that they used within this temple for their daily rituals. Beyond the second room, there's a third room, 138 feet, carved out of the interior of the mountain. And within this known as the Holy of Holies, there were 4 statues. One statue of Ramesses, the other 3 statues were statues of the Neteru, or so-called gods. So it showed you Ramesses is seated among his knowledge and power. The beauty of this temple, and it was built around 1250 BCE. The beauty of this temple is that when the doorway to the temple was thrown open, sunlight would shine 138 feet into the interior of the temple and illuminate the face of Ramesses II, only on 2 days and the day of his coronation, which meant that in 1250 BCE, African architects, engineers, and mathematicians and astronomers knew that the earth was round, knew that the earth rotated on its orbit around the sun, and that it orbited the sun, it tilted on its axis a maximum of 23.5 degrees as it made that 365-day journey around. This information into account in order to design a temple on the two most important days of his life, the day of his birth and the day of his coronation. This is powerful stuff. This is who we were. This is who we were. And if we truly come face to face with this reality and internalize it, we will see this is. So, Maurice White, Earth, Wind, and Fire, chose the temple of Alan-Sambel of the album, The All in All. Look at the front and back cover of the album. Here's his entire cover. And essentially is that this cover depicts the all in all. The all in all is another term for the creator, the source of all life. This omnipotent, omnipotent being. And it also represents a concept which native people have known for thousands of years. And that is, there is no time. And that with an understanding of this, you will know that the all in all, the creator, exists everywhere simultaneously. In the past, in the present, and in the future. So this album cover depicts the all in all. It shows you the past, Kemet in its glory. In the spine you see modern day Egypt. You see the future, the all in all. You're in the middle of it. You're in the midst of it. Don't even realize that you are a creator. You have the ability right now to tap into this power, to reach back into the past and apply this knowledge in your life. You can create a future for your children. That is what free people do. That is what this power is for. The inside of this album is a masterpiece. Inside this album, it took me a number of years to dissect it, to study it and to understand what it all represented. But the inside of this album represents 12 pillars of knowledge, 12 ways by which this ancient knowledge or secrets have been made available to humankind. What you notice here are two cherubs, a bolt of lightning, which symbolizes the creator. You see a pyramid here with the eye of Heru. In the background, you see Heramakit right here. So these are all guardians of this ancient wisdom. It has been distilled through many different cultures over many, many millennia. And this open book represents the secret, represents knowledge. The flame represents light or enlightenment. So this light, this knowledge, has been available to you in a number of different mediums. It's been available to you through astrology, an understanding of the Hermetic sciences. This is the caduceus. It's been available to you through Hinduism. It's been available to you. This is a symbol. This is the last symbol. It was about 8 years ago when I finally deciphered this symbol. This symbol is called the cock of Abraxas. And Abraxas is the mathematical word, the spoken name of the Creator. The word Abraxas, you all remember Santana had an album called Abraxas? Santana is another brother who is into some very deep spiritual metaphysical teachings. Check out his music, check out the artwork on his album, early albums. Santana is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful spirit. Abraxas is the root of the word abracadabra. We see here the Ankh, the Kemetic symbol of life. Represents the balancing of the masculine and feminine sources of creation. We see here the menorah. We see here the eye of her. the Eye of Jehuti. The Eye of Jehuti. Here's a bust of Shakespeare, which symbolizes literature. Here's the cross, which symbolizes Christianity. This is Hinduism, this is Buddhism. I'm sorry. This is Hinduism, this is Buddhism. And then this is music. Right. These are just 12 ways, of many, many ways, that this knowledge has been made available to. So the reality is, it doesn't matter if you're a Christian or a Jew or a Buddhist or a Muslim, as long as you tap into the higher aspects of the Creator, that particular religious interpretation of the Creator. And so what we begin to understand is many aspects of the one manifestation of the Creator. And all of these aspects, if we truly understand the principles that I demonstrated here before us, that all of these aspects are of equal value. None is superior to the other. And this concept is a fundamental difference between religion and spirituality. See, religion purports that God is better than your God. So I can kill you, I can enslave you, I can rape you, I can sell you because you call God by a different name. That ain't spiritual. Religions are man-made. Religions are man's attempt to understand spirituality. And we know from experience that some terrible name in some people's concepts of God. There was an Earth, Wind & Fire album that came out in 1982 called Power Light. In 1982, by the 80s, situations started to change, and Maurice obviously felt, I need to stop being so covert and esoteric in my. I need to come on out and tell folks what's really going on. So the Power Light album shows a figure person with the 7 chakras, energy centers that exist within the body, that some cultures talk about and know are real. And it shows you the flow of energy from the universe into your body and how it activates these energy centers. This symbol symbolizes the 7 chakras, and these 7 chakras are directly related to the caduceus. The symbol that represents health, physical health. It also speaks to spiritual health. That's energy. And so this information, this symbol, understanding this symbol, the meaning of this symbol, then helps us to understand the hidden messages in Earth, Wind & Fire's most significant song, That's the Way of the World. That's the way of the world. The lyrics of That's the Way of the World say, hearts of fire create love, desire to take you higher and higher to your place on the throne. Hearts of fire means bringing your energy to the heart. And fire is a symbol that represents burning off the dross, burning off all of those contaminated elements so that your soul becomes pure. And the heart in ancient Kemet was the seat of the soul. So hearts of fire create love, desire to move you higher and higher among the chakra system to reach your place on the throne. And the throne is the crown. All right? So God, the goddess, is within you. And what you need are the keys to identify these aspects of the Creator within you and the discipline to come to know the Creator and manifest the Creator so that you can function as a co-creator on earth. That is who we are. That is what we are designed to do. There's not somebody up in the heavens looking down on everything that we do, because everything exists within you. You have the spark of the Creator within you. So now it's up to you to either create heaven on earth or to create hell on earth. That potential is within you. And the purpose of of the ancient priesthood, the purpose of the educational system is to help you identify the Creator within you. And if your religious system, if your social organization is not doing that, they are failing. So, for those of you who know me and know that I love Earth, Wind, and Fire, one of their most meaningful songs is a prayer set to music. It was on the That's the Way of the World album, and it's called All About Love. And I want you all to listen and internalize this prayer. Check it out.
We never spent time talking to you. So we figured we'd lay on you and let you know how we feel. Paint a pretty smile each day. Loving is a blessing, yeah. Never let it fade away. It's all about love, yeah. True romance, beauty that's around you, which I say is a natural fact, because you are. Right on. You know, like, what else, for instance, you know, like, you study all kinds of sciences, mysticism, world religion, and so forth, you dig? And like, coming from your place, all of these things help because they give you an insight to your inner self. Have mercy. There's an outer self we gotta deal with. They want to like to go to parties, want to like to dress up, be cool, look pretty, on ego trips and all this. So hey y'all, I'm trying to tell you, I love you. All the beautiful things around you, trees and birds. No, you gotta make some beauty. Have mercy.
You old timers know the word. Come on. Right. Come on, girl. Come on.
All right, now, y'all feeling that? It's 30 years old, and it's just as good today as when it first came out. You can play this song, you can let your mama listen to this song. You can let your little children listen to this song. That's, music is supposed to be used to lift up your spirit. The pornography that our children are listening to is designed specifically to suppress their spirit, to destroy their soul, so that they will destroy themselves and everybody who lives in their neighborhood. And we have an obligation and a responsibility to change that. To change that. Maurice said, you know, you got to love you. You got to honor all the beautiful things around you, the trees and the birds. And suppose not a lot of beauty around you. If your neighborhood is torn down, you got to make some beauty. Listen to me. It ain't about extolling the virtues of everything that's wrong in your community. You've got to use your imagination to recreate that which you need in order to create a space where the Creator can manifest itself within you, so that you then can rebuild everything around you by first rebuilding yourself. That's what it's all about. That's what this stuff is supposed to do. So what we see, what we me understand is that the secret is the manual which should have been given to us at birth. Imagine how different our lives would be if our information before they conceived us. Imagine how different our lives would be if we were introduced to this information in kindergarten. And this knowledge was expanded when we were in the 3rd grade, when we were in high school, when we were in college. I always like to deal with information from a personal standpoint because you can talk and philosophize about stuff on the other side of the world, but until you can bring it home, it really doesn't mean anything. Until you can demonstrate it, it really doesn't have any value. So, I can say from my own personal experiences that as a young man that's fresh out of college, I realized that after all of these years of what I now realize is miseducation, in which I attended predominantly black schools all my life in Chicago, graduated from Howard University. I knew more about the history, the culture, the gods, the philosophy, the languages, the literature of everybody else except who I was as a person of African ancestry. And it was through my search for meaning in life which led me to where I am today. I can say specifically that in 1974, the same year I graduated from college, I met a brother who was an Akan priest and who gave some classes on African spirituality. And I was introduced to concepts of spirituality that were developed in Africa that I had no knowledge of. Educated Negroes, I believe that Africans were backwards folk who never knew anything, who never did anything. As a result of introducing myself to new information, my perspective of Africa, my perspective of the world, and more importantly, my perspective of myself changed. I saw myself through a different cultural lens. It was that experience which led me to be able to embrace and internalize the music of Earth, Wind, and Fire, so that I could hear the messages in the music, so that I could begin to be attracted to the images on the artwork, which stimulated my interest in Kemet and made it possible for me to create the desire to go to Kemet and then ultimately to travel to Kemet. And what's significant about travel to Kemet, as I said, I made my first trip to Egypt in 1980. And again, I'll be making my 40th trip to Egypt next month. That first trip to Egypt, I found out about it in September 1980. Dr. Ben came to speak at Howard University, and he lectured, and then he announced that he was going to Egypt in December. I didn't have the money to go to Egypt, but I wanted to go. And what better person to go with than Dr. Ben? So I said, I'm going to Egypt. I'm going to Egypt. And I began to use some of the principles that Prophet Brown, the current priest in D.C., had kind of introduced me to. And so I began, meditating and focusing my attention on the things that I desired. And I was self-employed at that time, and so, it's funny, because when you're self-employed, when you work for yourself, if you don't do the work, you don't get paid.
That's right.
If you don't get paid, you can't pay the rent. You got to deal with your family. So, in the early stages of my career in self-employment, I was always nervous, and I doubted, whether or not I would always be able to do the work necessary to do a satisfactory job for my client. I was doing design work at that time. And so I was always concerned about whether or not my client would be happy with my presentation. And so I remember one evening, it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was sitting down at my drawing board. I had to do this design at the end of the month. And I was stuck, I was doubting myself. I was doubting my ability. What if they don't like this? And if I don't get this deposit, then I got the rent is due, in a couple of weeks, and I got to do this, got to do that. So I stepped back from that anxiety for a minute. And I thought about my grandfather, who was one of the most creative persons I knew. Even though he had maybe a 5th or 6th grade education, he could build anything. And since I was the firstborn grandchild in the family, I don't mind saying I was the favorite. And so I would always, whenever my grandfather was working on a project, and whenever he's going to build something, I would always tag along. Go with him down to the hardware store, get the wood, get the nails, get the stuff, and I would be his little assistant and get him a hammer and help him out as he was working on things. And as I was reflecting on my grandfather and his creativity and how I needed that creativity. I needed the spirit of my grandfather at this particular point in time in my life. And, you know, I remember that my grandfather never drew plans, never wrote anything down. No, I basically went into a meditation, visualization, and saw myself as a child standing by and watching my grandfather build something in the house. That he never wrote anything down, he never did any designs or anything. He always had the information in his head. He had the finished product in his mind. And I remember saying to myself, if I could tap into that same level of creativity that my grandfather tapped into, then maybe that can help me. So, you know, I calmed myself, visualized, and saw myself looking at my grandfather. And then I saw myself as my grandfather inside of his mind. And I saw myself seeing what my grandfather saw. Seeing the finished product before you even began the project. And then all of a sudden, I saw it. I got it. It made sense to me. So then, coming back out of that, I saw myself meeting with my clients at the end of the week, showing them the designs that I did, laying out 3 different designs, and I saw them say, oh, we like that design, go with that one. And all I did was, visually now, mentally, look over my shoulder and see what they look at, and say, okay, I can draw that. And I drew that. Took the designs into the office, and actually I did that design that I knew was a winner, and I created 2 other designs that weren't as good, so I can lead them to that design, picking that design. And went into the office to meet with the client, and it happened just like I saw it. That's when I realized that the power is within us, and that the imagination, creativity is here. You know, we've been taught to think that nothing is nothing, but nothing is really the source of everything. Everything exists right now. So all you need to do is, what did George say, change your mind, and you change your relationship with time. The solution lies within the problem. So look at the problem from a position of peace. Look at the problem from a solution-oriented mentality, and the solution will manifest itself before you. And then all you got to do is to put that solution in action, and you will get the results that you desire. That's the creative process. That is how everything that any person has ever created comes into existence. That ain't a secret. That's a skill that has to be cultivated, like riding a bicycle, like learning to tie your shoe, like learning to reason. And so I was confronted with this trip to Egypt. Is in September, October, November, December. I had like 3 months, I had 4 months to get, at that time it was $1,500, right? So, where am I going to get the money from? But I said, all right, I'm going to Egypt. I don't know where the money is coming from, but I'm going to Egypt. So what I did was, I looked at the information on the trip, and I figured out I wanted to make 4 payments. And I figured out how much of a deposit I would have to send in order to have a balance of $999.99. And I wrote 3 post-dated checks, post-dated a week apart, for $333.33. I put all 4 of the checks in an envelope, mailed it off, and said, I am going to Egypt. Within a week, I got a telephone call from a partner of mine, who was one of my mentors. He called me up, panicked. He said, Tony, what you doing? I said, well, you know, nothing. I don't have anything pressing. He said, I've got this job that just came in, and it's got to be done by next week. Do you have time to help me out with this job? I said, well, yeah, sure. And so for the next 5 days, we put in 16, 17-hour days. And by the end of the week, I had the money to go eat. There you go. All right. So I saw that I had the skills to get the money. I just needed to put myself in the proper place where I could utilize those skills to get what I wanted. So life will give you whatever you ask for, but you gotta work for it. Right. It ain't just gonna drop out the sky. You gotta work for it. I've been taking groups to Egypt since 1987. So as I'm talking about trips, doing a lecture talking about trips and promoting the trip and letting people know when we're leaving, whenever people say, oh, you know, I'd like to go to Egypt, but I don't have the money. Whenever somebody tells me I don't have the money, I step back and say, okay, well, you're not going to have the money. You're not going. Because the nature of the universe is to respond to your thoughts. So you must be careful of the thought seeds that you plant in the garden of your mind. If you're thinking doubt and less than, that is exactly what the nature will give you. The universe will give you doubt and less than. And so, you know, I've had a number of transforming experiences since I traveled to Egypt, and each experience made me more aware of my potential as a spiritual being having a human experience in this body, personified by this person by the name of Tony Browder. That's all this life is right now, okay? And so, yeah, I can stand before you all and say that while I have no formal training in writing, I've either written or co-authored 9 books, which are now being used in school systems throughout the world. While I have no formal training in research or public speaking, I have been invited by people to travel all over the world to talk about the research that I've done. And so, you gravitate to that which you secretly love most. You make in life the exact reproduction of your thoughts. There is no chance, coincidence, or accident in a universe ruled by law and divine order. So I stand before you all today with the knowledge that I don't have the right to impose my thoughts and my beliefs on you. I'm not here to do that. I'm not here to proselytize. You know, what I'm essentially doing is to share with you my experiences and give you the same opportunity that Morpheus gave Neo in the Matrix. He said, I can show you the door, but you've got to open it. You've got to open it. So the primary challenge confronting Africans living in America is that we've been conditioned to be our own worst enemy. We've been taught to hate ourselves, and we lack the historical and cultural tools to correct the problem. But what did George say? The solution lies within the problem. The answer is in every question. So the answer is, as Maurice said, you got to love you. You got to honor all the beautiful things around you. See beauty where there is none. Make some beauty if there ain't no beauty. That's what you got to do. That is what people have been telling us, trying to help us come out of this period of miseducation and use our own tools to rebuild our minds. So, you know, this is what the Black Power movement in the 1960s was all about. Black folk becoming aware of who they were, not as colored people, not as Negroes, but as black people who took pride in black heritage, black culture, and black traditions. That's why they wore these big old afros. That's why they wore dashikis. That's why they took African names, because they were immersing themselves in blackness. And so what we've got to begin to understand from that is that we've got to learn to love ourselves. It's only we are an extension of ourselves. You know the old South African proverb, I am because we are because I am. We are the same. You affirm me, I am nothing without you. You affirm my humanity. When I see you, I see my mother, I see my grandmother, I see my daughter, I see all the people within my family. I don't see a B or an H or all of these other things that are being pumped into the minds of our children in order to prevent them from cultivating this consciousness. If they are our children, we have an obligation to rescue them from themselves, because that is what needs to be done. And so the issue is, the point is, and in closing, you can't love yourself if you don't know yourself. You can't love yourself if you bought into other people's definition of who you are and what you are. You got to know. You've got to know, not to think, not to believe. You must, and definitely not to dream. See, the whole thing is, The folk want you dreaming, because when you're dreaming, you are asleep. And as long as you're dreaming, as long as you are asleep, the dream works. Alright? You won't work and think and act in a conscious state. It's all about consciousness. So you've got to know that you can use the same African ancestral wisdom that Rhonda Byrne used to create The Secret. You can use the same African ancestral wisdom that Harriet Tubman used, that Malcolm X used, that Oprah Winfrey and others have used to transform their world. I can share the knowledge of good thoughts and bad thoughts with you, but you have to be receptive to this knowledge. You have to internalize it, you have to learn it, and you have to apply this knowledge throughout your life. And you've got to remember that every thought felt as true or allowed to be accepted as true by your conscious mind takes root in your subconscious mind and blossoms sooner or later into an act and bears its own fruit. It all begins first, right here. What you believe is who you will become. And so the ability to successfully navigate life has been and will always be yours. That's your right. You have to know yourself and take responsibility for your life. You must become the captain of your own starship. And you must boldly go where you have never gone before. And if you do so, you will live long and you will prosper as you journey into the final frontier of your mind and know your real, true self. Ashe. Information in your life. See, knowledge means nothing if you can't find practical ways to incorporate this information into your life on a daily basis, and within 30 days you should be able to see demonstrated proof that this knowledge is working in your life. If you can't do that, if you can't see that, then you need to throw that away or put it aside and search for something else that will give you what you need in order to negotiate life. So we're going to take this approach in examining The Secret, and it's a two-part presentation. It's a little lengthy, but I think you all can tolerate it. It's a little lengthy. I want to break things down. I like to use a lot of visuals. But Brother Kaka asked me to do one thing before I get started, and that was to address a question that Grandma just put to him a minute ago when she received her sweat cloth. Apet Sut. What is Apet Sut? How many people have traveled to Kemet before? Right? Those of you who have traveled to Kemet know that Apet Sut is in the city of Warset, which the Greeks renamed Thebes, which the Arabs renamed Luxor or Karnak. Warset is the site of the greatest temple complex ever created by human beings on earth. This temple complex is so vast that you can take every church built in London, England, and put them inside of this temple and still have room for 2 football fields. Wow. It was documented as the oldest university on earth. So these temples were not just temples in the contemporary interpretation of a temple. They were centers of education, institutions of higher learning. And the priests who moved about, the priests and priestesses who moved about within these temples were scholars of the highest magnitude. They were responsible for studying the heavens and the movement of the stars, the sun and the moon across the heavens. And as a result, they gave humanity the first calendar of 365 important days. They were responsible for giving us the first systems of writing, They were responsible for creating the first library. There were tens of thousands of books in the Pedicit, the most selective places. They were responsible for giving us mathematics, geometry, calculus, engineering, architecture, philosophy, medicine, theology. So Kemet, specifically the Pedicit, and the one set most selected places, was where that was in ancient times where the United States of America is today. That was the place to be. And people came there from all over the world to get a piece of what Africans have been studying for thousands of years. See, the thing that makes Kemet so significant is that no nation in the annals of human history existed as long as Kemet existed. 3,000 years. 3,000 years of continuous existence. They've had a few minor periods of interruption, but 3,000 years. And so, you know, the United States of America is not even 250 years old. And it's already on the decline. Absolutely. So you can imagine just 1,000 years of scholarly research, what your contribution to humanity would be. Now magnify that 3 times, and you got Kemet. That's why we focus our attention on the Nile Valley. That's why Kemet is so important to us. And we know, architecturally, from an astrological standpoint, from a sociological standpoint, Kemet was initially populated and inhabited by indigenous African people. Yes. Indigenous African people. So this idea of saying that Egypt, when I was living in Chicago, I remember writing a report on Egypt and consulting the World Book Encyclopedia. And in the World Book Encyclopedia, they stated that the Egyptians, now this is a world-renowned authority, they stated that the Egyptians were a race of dark-skinned Caucasians. That's how they were classified, dark-skinned Caucasians. So in essence, what we're dealing with is the history, the culture, the philosophy, the contributions of African people in the Nile Valley has been usurped by conquerors. And the story was turned upside down. And then others used fragments of this information in order to elevate themselves falsely to the highest level of humanity. And thus they propagate the lies about the ancient African world. And one of the significant aspects which relates to what I'm going to talk about this evening is that Kemet was the source of knowledge. Not just knowledge about the world, but knowledge about the universe. It had been cataloged and retained for thousands of years.
You're so much better than you know. When you're lost, you're alone, you can't get back again. I will find you, darling, and I'll bring you home.
But I want us to look at the so-called Book of the Dead, the Papyrus of Kemet, which was written about 1238 BCE. And within this document, we know first of all that the so-called Book of the Dead were notes for the afterlife. They were originally known as Pergam Heru, or the chapters for coming forth into day. The chapters are coming forth into a new life, a new consciousness. I refer to view them as cliff notes for the soul, because they were put in the sarcophagi in order to help the spirit of the deceased negotiate the 12 gates of the underworld, so that he or she could say the specific passwords which would help them get from one level of the underworld into the next underworld, so they can come into the Hall of Ma'at, the Hall of Justice. And this scene is one of the most significant scenes that comes out of these documents that show the weighing of the soul. This is what the journey was all about, the weighing of the soul. And in this process of the weighing of the soul, we see the soul of the departed, Kemet, is dressed in white. Because in indigenous culture, white is a color that represents death, the absence of life.
Yes.
Black is a color that represented the Creator, God. Here we see Impu, who's known to the Greeks as Anubis, leading that soul to the Hall of Ma'at. And here we have the most important symbol in this scene, the scale of Ma'at. We see an image of Ma'at here, the feminine head. Ma'at is feminine energy with the ostrich feather on her head. This is the scale of Ma'at. And on the right side of the balance, we see the feather of Ma'at, which again represents all of the principles and concepts associated with this African feminine nature, or principle or aspect of the divine. On the other side of the balance, we see a vessel which represents the heart of the deceased. Thus, the title of this piece, The Weighing of the Soul, because in ancient Kemet, the heart was viewed as the seat of the soul. So on the Day of Judgment, in 1238 BCE, Kemet heart was weighed on the scale of Ma'at. And it was there where he had to recite the 42 admonitions of Ma'at. 42 admonitions of Ma'at. Some of those admonitions are, I have not stolen, I have not robbed, I have not committed adultery, I have not committed sin, I have not defrauded offerings. These 42 admonitions of Ma'at were distilled by Moses and presented to his people as the 10 Commandments. And what we don't know is that they left 32 behind. Okay? After Ma'at Kemet declared his innocence as his heart was weighed on the scale of Ma'at. If his declaration was in fact true, if his words were true, then it meant that the scale would balance out because his heart would be as light as a feather. That's where the concept comes from. And this event was recorded in the Book of Life by Jehuti.
Yes.
Here's Jehuti again. And then Heru, the son of Asar, would then present the venerated Kemet to his father Asar, who is seated on the throne of judgment. And then Asar would make a determination as to whether or not his soul would go to heaven or hell. So we're talking about African concepts of the soul, African concepts of the judgment of the soul, African concepts of the judge sitting on the throne of judgment, the 42 admonitions of Ma'at, in the 13th century BCE.
Yes, yes.
1,300 years before the birth of Jesus. And this is an old document which has been used in Kemet from the beginning of Kemetic time, at least 3000 BC. You see what folk have done with our knowledge? See how they changed our knowledge, flipped it upside down, and presented it to the world as their own creation. So, this is a very important scene, very significant scene. And what we know is that we know about the books of the dead. Everybody talks about the book of the dead, the book of the dead, the book of the dead. There are thousands, tens of thousands of so-called books of the dead. What they don't talk about are the books of life. See, because it appears when you listen to the Discovery Channel or National Geographic, they tell you that the Egyptians had a preoccupation with death. That's why they built all these tombs, they built all these monuments. No, these Africans had a preoccupation with life. And they knew that life was eternal. They knew that life was cyclical. They knew that you would be judged, and then you would come back and live another life. That is a part of contemporary African society today. That is why we honor our ancestors. Why? Because they live in us right now. We are the ancestors. So there is a continuum in this knowledge. Unbroken despite slavery. Unbroken despite segregation, Jim Crow. That essence is still in us. And so what I want us to realize is that forget this nonsense about the African people having a preoccupation with death. They had a preoccupation with life. So the question is, where are the books of life? If there were thousands of books of death, there must have been tens of thousands of books of life. Have you all ever seen them? They ever talk about them? They are secreted in private libraries throughout the world. People have been studying this information, trying to decipher the meta-nature, trying to understand the principles so that they can hold on to power as long as they can. And so what I want us to realize, that the teachings of Ma'at and Jehuti were the cornerstone of this knowledge system. So let's look at these two principles. Specifically, principles associated with Jehuti were given to us by Professor George G.M. James in his book, The Stolen Legacy, as the 10 virtues, the prerequisites for moral development. 10 virtues are control of thought, control of action, steadfastness, identity with the higher ideals, evidence of a mission, evidence of a call to spiritual order, freedom from resentment, confidence in the power of the master, the teacher, confidence in your own abilities, and then preparation for initiation. And of these 10 virtues, the first 3 are the most significant to me. Control of thought, control of action, and steadfastness. Everything begins with thought. Everything begins with thought. All of your actions are a direct result of how you think. So, as gosh, I'm blanking on my brother's name. Give me a minute. Carter G. Woodson said, if you control a person's thinking, what? You don't have to worry about their actions. You don't have to tell them where to go. You don't have to tell them to buy 40 or smoke blunts, because their thoughts are going to pre-program them to engage in self-destructive behavior, so they will be no good to themselves or their community. So control of thought is the first thing, because your thought determines your actions. If you are thinking correctly, you will do correct things. The third point is steadfastness. So if you're thinking right and doing right, keep doing that. Maintain that steadfast relationship. And as you continue to do that over a period of months, your consciousness will begin to elevate itself, and you will begin to experience, you will begin to identify with higher ideals. This stuff that you see on television doesn't interest you anymore. The folks that you used to hang out with, party with, they don't interest you anymore, because you now have higher ideals. You now see the world, you now see your life differently. And as you allow yourself to cultivate these higher ideals, you begin to experience evidence of a mission. Your purpose in life. Every person was born to do something better than any person on this earth. So our thoughts were designed to lead us in that direction so that we can find our mission in life. not a Kemetic word. Pharaoh is a word that was introduced to the world by Asiatics, the so-called Hyksos, or shepherd kings, who invaded Kemet, one of the first invaders of Kemet. And they used that word Pharaoh to describe the rulers of Kemet. Anybody who has any knowledge of history should know that that is an illegitimate word. More specifically, the word Pharaoh is a word that was used to describe the house that the king of Kemet lived in. See, the king of Kemet lived in a palace which was called Per-Ah, which means the great house. So what these foreigners did was to take that term, great house, and use it to describe the person who lived in the house and resided over the entire country. So that would be the equivalent of a foreigner coming to the United States and referring to the President of the United States as the White House. It is a testimonial to your ignorance. So anytime you hear anybody use the word, oh, wicked Pharaoh, it means that they don't know. And they don't know that they don't know. And they're teaching you knowledge. So we've got to do some research so that we can learn to question. You should learn to question everybody. And there's nothing wrong with questioning people. We live in a society of ideas. We have a marketplace of ideas. And everyone should have the right and the opportunity to present your ideas in the marketplace of the general public. And with questioning, you will find out whether or not your ideas will. See, if you don't do your research, if you believe in things that you don't understand, you what? You suffer. Superstition ain't place. So we must apply the same principle to the secret. So in order for me to do this, I need 5 folk. We have 5 volunteers. Let's go up. 1, 2, young lady, sister, come on, 3, brother, 4, brother here, 5. 5 folk, come up here. And I want you all, what I'm going to do is to allow my 5 people here to represent a timeline, a historical timeline. So I've got these dates. Brother, let me have a little sister here. Sister, I want you to represent the year 0. All right. And I want you to stand right here. Brother, I want you to represent the year 2007, current year. And I want you to stand against that wall right there. Careful with the cords. Sister, I want you to represent the year 30 BC. And I want you to stand right here. No, actually, I want you to stand right here, 30 BC. Brother, I want you to represent 332 BC. I want you to stand right here. And sister, I want you to represent 3000 BC. I want you to stand, go outside the building. All the way over here. So this is our timeline. And so I want to do an analysis of the secret based upon this timeline. And I want these people to be our reference point. Now, Kemet was fully developed 3000 BC. Already had the alphabet, had already begun building temples. The pyramids, Great Pyramids of Khufu, Great Pyramid of Saqqara, pyramid designed by Imhotep for King Zoser, was built around 2900 BC. So right up here. And then less than 160 years later, the 3 pyramids at Giza were built. The greatest architectural monuments in the history of humanity. The Greeks did not come into Kemet as invaders until 332 BC. All right? After everything had been built. The Greeks came as conquerors. They did not add anything new. The Greeks only had control of Kemet for a little less than 300 years before the Greeks were conquered by the Romans. The Romans came in 30 BC and stole everything that the Greeks had stolen from the Kemites. This represents today, the year 0, when Jesus, quote unquote, was born. And then this is 2007, where we are right now. So this is our timeline. Right? This is our timeline. So what I want us to do, let's do this. Hi guys, you got a piece of tape? Oh, here it is. I got some. What I want to do is to post this timeline so that you all can use it as a visual reference as I talk about the secrets. So can you just take this one? That wall. Sister, can you put this right here? This is the year 0. And can you put this on the other end of the podium right here? This is 30 BC. And can you put this right here? And can you take your piece to the wall? So this is our timeline. All right, thank you all very much. This is our timeline. Going to use our forensic analysis of the secret. Okay? I want to go back to the images in the dramatization of the secret DVD and break that down for you from a historical perspective so that you can understand what the secret is really all about. Okay? When you find that mission in life, you will then experience a call to spiritual order. Call to spiritual order. You will unite your consciousness with the spirit in the universe. It will fuse itself within your body, and you will know who you are and what it is you must do. And as you experience that development, number 7 is key. You must experience freedom from resentment. Because your boyfriend or your girlfriend, your wife or your husband, your mom or your daddy, your friends will say, what's wrong with you? You don't hang out like you used to. You think you better than we are, don't you? Simply because you found that reason for living. So you must be free from the resentment that your loved ones will heap upon you. 8, confidence in the power of the master. There's a saying that when the student is ready, the master will appear. So you must have confidence in the ability of the master who will enter your life and then help further your development along the spiritual path. And at some point, you must surrender yourself to the process and stop questioning everything. At some point, you've got to know that I trust this person. So what they tell me to do, I will do. Because I know they have my best interests at heart. As you continue along that development, you then will experience confidence in your own abilities. Because the confidence of the master has now been distilled within you. And you now know with crystal clarity who you are and what it is you must do. And then 10-point preparation for initiation, you got to step into the world. You got to step into the community and demonstrate your mastery of these 10 virtues. That is your test. That is your test. That is the curriculum for the development of our spiritual power. And the symbol associated with that process was a triangle pointing up, representing this masculine energy, masculine physical energy, seeking to reunite with the source of spiritual power. So let's look at the feminine counterpart of that. It's represented in the 7 principles of Ma'at. 7 principles of Ma'at are truth, justice, righteousness, balance, harmony, order, and reciprocity. All right? Truth. Strive for truth in everything. Strive for justice and righteousness in everything that you do.